Hello my friends, today we are gonna complete our full stack booking application using React, Node.js and MongoDB. This is the homepage. We will fetch all data from MongoDB using a Backend API. Let's choose any destination, date range and option. When I click on this search button, it's gonna fetch all related hotels. We will be able to change search inputs or price range, and it's gonna refetch this list. Let's choose one of them, and this page shows the hotel information. And here it calculates the price according to date range and room number which I've chosen. And when I want to reserve any room, I'll be redirected to login page and I will try to log in. After a successful login process, I will be able to see room options and available rooms. I'm gonna choose room numbers and complete process. And let's say I'm another user and I want to reserve a room on these dates, which includes exactly the same dates the previous user has chosen. In this case, when I select the same hotel, these rooms are not available anymore. And finally, we are gonna use an admin dashboard and we will be able to delete items and create new ones. If you didn't watch the React admin panel tutorial, it's gonna be in the card on the top left. It's an awesome project that you can learn how to create a REST API, how to provide security using JWT, how to make API requests using cookies, custom hooks, React Context API, and more. I hope you will like it. If you want to see more tutorials like this, please like the video. If you are ready, let's get started. Okay, firstly I'm gonna create new folder here. It's gonna be our backend server. I'm gonna say API, and after that we are gonna add here our React application also. So let's open our terminal. So firstly I'm gonna initialize my Node application. To do that I'm gonna say npm init -y, and it's gonna create our package.json. Firstly, what we are gonna need is Express framework. So I'm gonna say npm I, or if you are using yarn add and express. Okay, it's ready. To run our application, we are gonna need main file, let's say index.js. And in this file, I'm gonna create my application. Let's import express. It's gonna be from express. But if you are using Node.js, by default, you should export your libraries like that. Const express require and express. But I don't like using this structure. Instead, I'm gonna use import export. But to do that, you are gonna add one more line, and it's gonna be type, and it's gonna be module. In this case, we can use AS6 modules like import, export. If you do that, let's create our application. I'll say const app. It's gonna be express function. And that's all. To run our application, we should listen any port. So let's say app.listen. I'm gonna write here any port number. Let's say 8800. You can write here whatever you want, but make sure that other applications are not using this port number. And finally, after connection, you can write here, let's say, connected to backend. So let's start our application. To do that, I'm gonna write here start, and it's gonna be node index.js. So whenever I write here npm start or yarn start, by the way, I prefer using yarn instead of npm. I think it's much more effective. Of course, it depends on you. If you are using npm, it really doesn't matter. I will say start, and as you can see, connected to backend. But if I want to make any changes here, like that, I'm gonna say my file. To see our changes, we have to come here and terminate and start our application again. But it's not a good idea to do that over and over again. Instead, we are gonna use one more library, and it's gonna be NodeMon. And right now, Instead of node, I'm gonna say node-mon index.js, and let's terminate this server and start again. And this time, as you can see, node-mon is watching our files, and whenever we make any changes, we are gonna see it here immediately. Let's say dot, I'm gonna save, and as you can see, it's here. Perfect. So let's try to connect our MongoDB. I'm gonna go to cloud.mongodb.com, and here, after logging your account, you are gonna see this page. Let's create new DB. As you can see, there are 3 options here, but we are gonna use the free one. We are just trying to learn something. And here, you can choose any cloud provider like Google, Windows, or Amazon. And after choosing your region, you can create your cluster. Of course, here you should create a username and password. Let's say Lama and Lama. And I'm gonna create user. This is gonna be our admin account, so nobody else can reach our DB. And one more thing we should do, and it's adding an IP address. Of course, if you are deploying your application, you should write here your server IP address, but we are gonna use localhost, so you can use either your current IP address, or you can write here 40, like that. In this case, it's gonna allow every IP address. And I'm gonna say finish and close, and I'm gonna go to DB. Okay, how we are gonna connect this? I'm gonna click here. We are gonna use it in our application, so I'm gonna click here, and this is our MongoDB URI. As you can see, we have username here. We are gonna change this password, and finally, we are gonna add here our DB address. But this URI is really important. It's gonna be kinda a secret key, so we have to hide it. So instead of coming here and MongoDB connection and this URI, I'm gonna hide it inside env file. I'm gonna say .env, and let's say mongo equals this. Of course, let's change our password. It's gonna be Lama, and DB name will be booking. I'm gonna save, but how we are gonna reach that data? We can't directly write process env. I'm gonna add here one more library, and it's gonna be .env. So let's import this .env. To use this, we should make some configuration, and it's gonna be .env and config, and that's all. Right now we are able to reach our data, but how we are gonna connect to MongoDB? Of course, you can use MongoDB JavaScript library directly, but there is one more option, and it's my favorite, and it's Mongoose. And one of the most important thing is we can create any collection schema. You can give its properties and its type. Let's copy this and add here, yarn add and Mongoose. And let's see how we can connect. I'm gonna click here. And as you can see, we are gonna use Mongoose connect method, and inside we are gonna pass our URL. Let's copy this. I'm gonna come here and paste. Of course, we should import Mongoose, and it's gonna be our secret URL. So I'm gonna say process env, and remember what was the name? Just Mongo. And after that, if there is an error, we are just gonna throw this error. In this case, our application will crash. Let's come here and say const connect, and it's gonna be async function. That because we are using await here, and I'm gonna wrap this function like that. And whenever we connect it to our backend server, we are gonna call this function like this. If there is any problem with MongoDB connection, there is no sense to use our backend server because it's just an API server. If there is no DB connection, it means there is no API request, so it's gonna return this error. Let's write here some console log, and I'm gonna say connected to MongoDB. I'm gonna save. As you can see, connected to backend, connected to MongoDB. I'm explaining this arrow throwing again and again, that because it's really important to understand that it's our initial connection. If there is a problem, it's not able to connect again and again. It's not gonna try. But if our initial connection is okay, when some problem happens in our MongoDB, after that it's not a problem, it's gonna try to connect again. What I mean by that? Let's say mongoose and connection, it's gonna listen our connection, and if there is a disconnection problem, disconnected, we can just log this problem. Let's say MongoDB disconnected. And in this case, if it disconnected, it's gonna try to connect again. So let's write one more listener, for example, and it's gonna be connected. MongoDB connected. As you can see, connected to MongoDB. So if I come here and, for example, for my network access, if I delete this IP address, it's gonna return our error here, MongoDB disconnected. We should wait that because it's gonna take time. As you can see, MongoDB disconnected. But if I add here this IP address again, access from everywhere, I'm gonna confirm. It's gonna take a while and we are gonna see that it's again connected. As you can see, we didn't do anything. It's gonna reconnect again and again. And this is why this initial connection is important. I've just seen many questions in our Discord group and Facebook group, and I just wanted to explain. By the way, guys, if you are not following Discord or Facebook groups, links are gonna be in the description. I highly recommend you to follow them. You can help each other. Okay, let's try to understand how an API works. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna say app.get, and I'm gonna write here any endpoint. Let's say the home page, the main URL. And here, what Express does is taking a request and response parameters and use it inside any API request. What's this request? Basically, whatever comes from a user who is making API request, and this response will be what we are sending to our users as a response. Let's say response, and I'm gonna say send, or if you are sending any object, you can say JSON, doesn't matter. Let's say send, and I'm gonna say hello, first request. I'm gonna save, and if I come here and open localhost 8800, we are gonna see our response here. And if I say here, for example, users, I'm gonna refresh here. As you can see, cannot get that because we don't have any function. But if I go to users, we are gonna see our response again. And I'm gonna explain these requests later. Of course, we can have any get method, post method, put, delete, or any others. We are gonna use all of them, but there's a small problem here that because we cannot write all of our request functions in the index file, it's gonna be probably thousands of lines. To prevent this, we are gonna create one more folder here. By the way, they are not inside our API folder. I made a mistake here. I'm sorry for that. I'm gonna move them here. And in this case, it's not gonna be booking app. We are gonna go inside API and start again. Okay, let's delete this one. We don't need that, I think. We can delete this one also, but if you want to log your disconnection in a text file or something like that, you can use this function. Okay, anyway, so what I'm gonna do is creating here one more folder, and it's gonna be routes. Which routes we are gonna use? We are gonna use users. We will be able to add new user, update, delete, whatever. And second one will be hotels, hotel rooms. And finally, I'm gonna add one more route here, and it's gonna be auth. So for authentication, we are not gonna use users route. We are gonna use a specific one. It's gonna be separated because it's really important. We are gonna use cookies, JSON web token. Basically, it's better to separate this file. But how we are gonna use them? Again, I'm gonna use Express here, and I'm gonna say const router, and it's gonna be Express router. and I should export this. I'm gonna say export default and router. In this case, we can take any API request using this router. Let's say get method, main URL again, request, response, and it's gonna be, let's say, response, send, hello, this is auth endpoint. I'm gonna save, and I'm gonna use this inside index file. To do that, we should import this. I'm gonna say import authentication root. You can name this whatever you want, that because we are using export default, and it's gonna be from roots and auth. And be careful here, if you are using import in Express server, you should write here JS also. For libraries, you don't need anything, but if you are using any file, don't forget to add this extension. Okay, let's use it. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna create a middleware. Let's say middlewares. And I'm gonna say app use. This is how we are creating any middleware. If you are not familiar with middlewares, don't worry, I'm gonna explain them. You are gonna understand better. But for now, let's say any URL here, it can be authentication. And if we visit this endpoint, I'm gonna say use auth root. Whenever we make requests for this endpoint, it's gonna use our root here and it's gonna look at any other endpoints. For example, this one. Let's try so you can see better. I'm gonna say auth and I'm gonna enter, and as you can see, this is auth endpoint. I can do for register, for example, auth and register endpoint. I'm gonna say register and enter. As you can see, it's here. Perfect. It works like that. By the way, if you want to, you can give here any common endpoint like API, or if you want to, you can write here your version 1, but it can stay like that. In this case, we should add here API also, and that's all. So I'm gonna do the same thing for others, for users, hotels and rooms. Users, hotels and rooms, and I'm gonna import them. Of course, we don't have yet, but we are gonna create hotels and rooms. Okay, let's copy everything here, and I'm gonna paste for these rooms. Of course, we don't need them. Hotels and users. So let's close everything here, and for better understanding, let's create new hotel and update, delete and get methods. So first one will be create, update, delete, get and get all. Let's get started. I'm gonna say router, and it's gonna be post method, that because we are creating, and it's gonna be main URL and request response. And we are gonna try to create new hotel. To do that, we are gonna need hotel model, one more folder here. It's gonna be models, and inside, let's say user.js, hotel.js, and room.js. Basically, we are gonna create our schemas. Let's come here. As I mentioned before, we are gonna create this schema, and we are gonna export it. Let's close them for now. We are gonna create them later. Let's see what we are gonna do. We are gonna import them like that. And I'm gonna say const hotel schema. And it's gonna be new mongoose and schema. And we are gonna write our properties. First one will be hotel name. We are gonna specify its type. It's gonna be string. And I'm gonna say required, and it's gonna be true, because we cannot create any hotel without hotel name. And for others, let's say type is gonna be string again, and required. Basically, it's gonna be type of our properties. It can be hotel or cabin or apartment, whatever. And it's gonna have st. Let's copy this and let's say st. and address and distance from city center. It's gonna have some images, let's say photos, but this time it's not gonna be string. That's because we are gonna have multiple images. So I'm gonna write here array, and each item inside will be string. It's not gonna be required. I'm gonna delete here, and we are gonna have hotel description. Let's say description like that. It's gonna be string and required. And also we are gonna have hotel rating. It's gonna be a number. It's not gonna be required at the beginning. We are not gonna have any hotel rating, but we are gonna limit this. I'm gonna say minimum will be 0 and maximum will be 5. It's gonna be in this range. And what else? It's gonna be rooms. I'm gonna delete here, and again it's gonna be an array. That's because it's gonna include room IDs, which we are gonna create later here. Basically it's gonna be a child of hotel. And let's write cheapest price. The price of the cheapest room is gonna be number. I'm doing this that because let's say we have hundreds of rooms, and checking their price for the cheapest one can be tough. The owner of the hotel or admin can just update this price. And finally, featured. And it's gonna be Boolean, and by default it's gonna be false. Basically in our React application we are gonna show some featured hotels. That's why we are using this. And that's all. Let's create our model and export. I'm gonna say export default, and it's gonna be mongoose.model, and we are gonna write here model name is gonna be hotel, and to create this model we are gonna use hotel schema. By the way, we don't have to use this schema, we are already using like that. So I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna try to create new hotel. To do that I'm gonna make here async. That because we are gonna connect to our DB, try to create new collection and new document inside, so it's gonna take time. That's why we are using async. And let's say try catch block. If there's an error we are gonna send this, let's say status 500, which is server error, and we are gonna send this error. But don't worry, this time we are not gonna be sending our errors like that. We are gonna handle them, we are gonna specify them. You are gonna see how to handle errors using Express middlewares, so don't worry about that. But for now I'm just showing for beginners how to make a real request. So let's come here and take hotel information from user. I'm gonna say const new hotel, and it's gonna be new hotel. Remember, this is our model, and inside I'm gonna say request and body. So what does it mean? Basically, as I said, request is what we are taking from user. We can take any parameter here, or we can take any query like that, limit 5, or we can take body, which I'm gonna show you soon in this software. So basically it's gonna store our hotel information. Let's delete here, it's gonna be homepage. And what we are gonna try, I'm gonna come here, const saved hotel. It's gonna be await. We are gonna use new hotel, which we have created, and just save. And if it's successful, we are gonna return this hotel. So I'm gonna say response status 200, which is successful, and JSON saved hotel. Oops, there is a problem. Okay. As I said, if you are using import, you should write here JS. Okay, so let's come here. We are gonna use Insomnia to make API request. Of course, you can use Postman, or you can even use your VS Code. But recently I'm using this Insomnia. It's much lighter than Postman. We are gonna just make API requests. So it really doesn't matter which one you are using. So I'm gonna say new request, and it's gonna be create hotel, and it's gonna be post method. And here, as you can see, there is a body, and I'm gonna choose JSON, and I'm gonna send hotel information. Remember what we have inside. I'm going to write them quickly: name, type, city, and others. Okay, let's give its name. By the way, I want to check something here. Okay, we forgot hotel title. It's going to be string and required. Okay, let's say hotel, I don't know, John. I'm using John everywhere. It's going to be hotel. City will be, let's say, Berlin. Address somewhere. Distance 500 meters from city center, and best hotel in this city. And hotel description, it should be longer, but anyway. And price will be number, remember. So let's say 100. Featured will be, actually we don't have to write this because by default it's false, and that's all. Let's try. Of course we didn't write. Our endpoint is going to be localhost and our port number, and remember API, and we are going to use hotels endpoint, and that's all. I'm going to try to send, and there is an error here. I just wanted to show this error to you, that because it's a common problem in our Discord server. Let's come here. By default, you cannot send any JSON object like this to Express server. To prevent this, we are going to use another middleware here, and it's going to be app.use express and JSON. I'm going to save, and I'm going to send again, and 200 successful. As you can see, this is the unique ID of our document. Let's check. I'm going to refresh this page. Actually, it was network page, but okay, let's come here, DB, browse collections, and as you can see, it created our DB immediately, and inside we have a collection which is hotels, and in this hotels we have a document. As you can see, all those informations are here. Perfect. So we can do the same thing for others. Not same of course, but similar things. When we update anything, we are going to use put method. And this time we don't need that. We already have inside our DB, let's say updated hotel, await hotel model, and we are going to write here find by ID and update. So we are going to pass here our ID. But how we are going to take this? It's really easy. We are going to use request parameters. Let's say ID. And we are going to pass it here. It's going to be request params and ID. And after finding our hotel, we are going to update it. To do that, we are going to use MongoDB set method. And here we are going to pass what we are going to change. And it's going to be inside request and body. And after that, if it's successful, we are going to return this. I'm going to save. And let's create another. By the way, we are going to need this ID, so I'm going to copy. And I'm going to create new request. It's going to be update hotel, put method, and we are going to have JSON body. I'm going to create localhost hotels, and we are going to pass here our ID. And finally, inside body, we are going to send what we want to update. Let's say hotel name. It was Hotel John, but this time it's going to be Hotel Jane. Let's send. And as you can see, it's still Hotel John, but if we check our DB here, I'm going to refresh. As you can see, it's Hotel Jane. Why it's happening is that because find by ID and update method is going to return the previous document, not the updated one. To prevent this, I'm going to come here and write one more option. And it's going to be new and true. In this case, after updating, it's gonna return the new version of our document. I'm gonna save and let's create again. Hotel, awesome hotel. I'm gonna send, and this time, as you can see, it's the newest version. Perfect. So let's come here and do the other things. It's gonna be ID again, but this time find by ID and delete. In this case, we don't need them. It's gonna be only hotel ID, and it's not gonna return anything. That's because we are deleting. Let's make this delete, by the way. And if everything is okay, we are gonna just send a message. Hotel has been deleted. And that's all. If you want to get a specific hotel, it's gonna be get. We are gonna take ID again. Let's say hotel, and this time we are just gonna find it. We don't need them. And if it's successful, we are gonna return this hotel. And one more thing, get all method. Basically, it's gonna get all hotels, so we don't need any ID anymore. And this time, instead of find by ID, it's gonna be just find. Basically, it's gonna fetch all hotels. Let's say hotels, and it's gonna return. I'm gonna save, and let's copy this actually. Let's say get hotel. It's gonna be get method. I'm gonna paste, and that's all. It's here. Sorry, it should be like that. It's our specific hotel. Let's create one more hotel chain. I'm gonna send, and if I create one more request, get all hotels, localhost API hotels, I'm gonna send, and as you can see, all hotels are here. And one more, and it's gonna be delete hotel. It's gonna be delete method, localhost API hotels, and I'm gonna give specific ID here. And if I say send, hotel has been deleted. Let's check here. I'm gonna refresh. And as you can see, only one hotel here. Let's try to understand how to handle errors in Express server. To do that, firstly, we should understand Express middlewares. Why middlewares are really important? That because it's able to reach our requests and response before sending anything to user. What I mean by that? Let's write here another middleware. So I'm gonna say use. We can reach request and response. And also we are gonna use next callback function. You are gonna understand better. Don't worry, just listen. So I'm gonna come here and I will say console log, hey, I'm a middleware. And I'm gonna go to hotels. Let's choose get all, for example, doesn't matter. I'm gonna say console log, hey, I'm a hotel root. And after, if I use here next, and if I say next, let's see what's gonna happen. I'm gonna go to get all hotels. I'm gonna send. And as you can see, hi, I'm a hotel root. Hi, I'm a middleware. So what happens here? Basically, whenever I run my application, it's gonna be ready for any API request. And as soon as a user makes an API request, it's gonna come here and check all middlewares. Firstly, it's gonna come here and it's gonna say, okay, in your API request, you can use anybody. So it's gonna come and check our routes. Which route we are using? Hotels. So it's gonna run this one. We are going to hotel routes. It's writing console log, hi, I'm a hotel route. And after that, it says next. Basically, it means go to next middleware. And what's the next middleware? We are not using rooms. It's gonna be this middleware. It's gonna come inside and it's gonna say, hi, I'm a middleware. So basically, you can send anything to user here. You can interrupt your API request here, and you can send anything else. Let's say response send hello from middleware. If I make this request, as you can see, it's not sending this user anymore. That because we are going to next middleware, and it's sending this message to us. And by the way, our application has crashed. There is one of the most common problems. It happens when you don't use any return statement. Yes, we are going to another middleware, but there is one more function here. We didn't end them. So instead of next, I'm going to say return next. And let's try again. And as you can see, there is no error anymore. That's because we are returning a response. Okay, so if I move this middleware here at the beginning, and this time let's delay it here, and I'm gonna say next. Of course, let's say console log a middleware. I'm gonna send, and this time, as you can see, a middleware. That because it visits this middleware first, and after that we are going to next one, which is API and hotels, and it executes those functions. It's that easy. So instead of this middleware, I'm gonna use a specific one. It's gonna be error handling middleware. So I'm gonna write here, but the different thing is we can actually have an error parameter here. So if any error occurs in our any route here, any API request, right now we are able to handle this error. So I'm gonna say return response, and status will be, let's say 500. We are gonna change this, and JSON will be hello error from handler. It's a specific middleware that we can use for error handling. Don't forget, it's gonna take 4 parameters, and it's gonna be in this order: error, request, response, and next. Otherwise, it's not gonna work. And if I come here, let's delete this. And if there's an error, instead of sending this like that, I'm gonna say next error. Of course, when we make requests, it's gonna work. To prevent this, let's say find by ID, for example, and I'm gonna write here any ID which is wrong, and let's say send. And as you can see, error from handler. And it's awesome that because we are able to customize our errors right now. We don't have to write 500. We can send specific one, or we can send specific message. To do that, I'm gonna say const error status. It's gonna come from our error and status, or if there is no status, it's gonna be 500. And I'm gonna do the same thing for message, error message, error.message. And if there is no message, we are gonna send something went wrong. And in this case, our status will be error status, and our message will be error message. Of course, you can customize here. Let's do that actually. I'm gonna say success false. We can send status again for users, and we are gonna send message. It's gonna be error message. And also, what else you can send? You can send stack. It's gonna give more details about our error, so it's gonna be error.stack. You can send whatever you want. There is no certain rule. So let's come here. Let's send again actually, and as you can see, success false, 500, and this is what MongoDB sends us as an error message, and this is stack, which explains more details. So let's imagine you are doing one more operation here. Of course, it's gonna be a fake operation, and let's say it failed. And if it fails, you don't wanna try and catch any hotel, you just wanna return any specific error. So I'm gonna say const error is gonna be new error, and let's say error.status 404 error.message. Sorry, not found. And we are gonna return our next function here, and inside we are gonna return this error. Let's see. Of course, I'm gonna say if failed. Let's try. I'm gonna send. Oh, what happened here? Status is, oh, sorry, it should be equal, of course, it's not a function. And message. We are defining from scratch. Let's try again. I'm gonna send, and as you can see, 404, sorry, not found, and where this error occurs. Okay, perfect, it's that easy. Of course, each time sending this like that is not a good idea. Instead, I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna create one more folder, let's say utils, and I'm gonna create error file, error.js, and I'm gonna create a function, const, actually let's say export const. We are gonna import this in our roots, so I'm gonna say create error, and it's gonna take two parameters, status and message, and we are gonna create our error here. Of course, status will be status, which we are gonna send, and this is gonna be message. And finally, we are gonna return this error. I'm gonna save here, and let's come back. Instead of this, I'm gonna say create error like that, and I'm gonna give status, let's say 401, and message, you are not authenticated. And if I come here and send again, and this time, as you can see, 401, you are not authenticated. Perfect, it's gonna work like that. But right now, we don't need that. We are gonna use this later, and it's gonna be fine again. Let's delete this also. Okay. Perfect. I hope you understood how it works, and let's create the most important part, and it's going to be authentication. It's important that because we are going to make all our requests using those authentication rules, otherwise everyone can delete our users, hotels, rooms, everyone can update them. There is no rule here. If someone gets this URL, they can just execute them anywhere. To prevent this, firstly we are going to create our users, then we are gonna give authentication and authorization rules. But before that, I wanna do something more here. What I want to do is moving all those operations in a different folder. So I'm gonna create here new folder, and it's gonna be controllers. Let's create our files for user. Of course, you can say user controller or whatever you wanna name it. Hotel, room, and authentication. I'm gonna close them, and first one will be create new hotel. So I'm gonna say export const create hotel. It's gonna be async, request, response, and next, and I'm gonna move everything here. I'm gonna take this and paste here. By the way, we are gonna send our error using next, and I'm gonna use this function here. I'm gonna delete here, and it's gonna be our function. Let's import, and that's all. It's much more clear because it should show us only our roots, only endpoints, and all those processes will be in these controllers. And update, delete, get, and get all. Let's say update, delete, get, and get all, or get hotels. Let's put them here. I'm gonna copy, and for update I'm gonna paste here. I'm using next, be careful about that. and delete like that. Get and get all like this. Okay, I'm gonna save here. By the way, we should import hotel model and we should write here JS. Okay, let's delete them and call our functions. This one will be update hotel, delete hotel, get hotel, and get all hotels like this. Let's try again. I'm gonna send. Okay, it's here, it works. So what I'm gonna do is closing everything here and opening authentication. Let's delete this one. And when we try to register, we are gonna call our controller function. Let's come here and I'm gonna say export const register async function again, and it's gonna take request, response, and next, and we are gonna make our operation here. Let's save and let's use this function here. Okay, we are ready. Quickly, I'm gonna write my try catch block. If there is an error, we are gonna use next and send this error. And what we are gonna try? Firstly, we are gonna create new user. Let's say const new user. I'm gonna say new user, but of course we didn't create our models. Let's come here. Actually, I'm gonna copy here and paste, and I'm gonna change this name. It's gonna be user. And what we are gonna have? Firstly, we are gonna have a username. It's gonna be string required, and also I'm gonna say unique. That because we shouldn't create any other user with this same username, so it's gonna be unique. So I'm gonna do the same thing for email, and let's say password, and finally it's gonna be is admin. To do that, we can use this featured. It's a boolean is admin. Default is gonna be false, and I'm gonna delete the rest like that. Okay, and one more thing I'm gonna add here, and it's gonna be timestamps, and it's gonna be true. Basically, it's gonna give created at and updated at times. I'm gonna save. Okay, we can use it. I'm gonna import this user, and inside I'm gonna say username is gonna be request, body and username, email and password. We can directly write here request and body, but I'm not doing this because we are going to change this password. We are going to encode this password to provide more security, so it can stay like that. And I'm going to say await new user and save. And if it's successful, I'm going to say response status 200. By the way, you can use 201 also, which means created successfully. It doesn't matter. And I'm gonna say user has been created. There's a problem here. I forgot this JS. In this route, I think. Okay, this JS. Okay, it's ready. Let's come here and try to register. I'm gonna create one more request, and it's gonna be register. It's gonna be post method. Did we say post or not? Okay, it's gonna be post. I'm gonna save, and we are gonna give JSON object. Let's write here localhost API and auth and register. And I'm gonna pass here username. Let's say John, email john@gmail.com, and password. Like that. I'm gonna send. And as you can see, user has been created. Let's check here. I'm gonna refresh. And we are gonna see our user here. Okay, perfect. User and John. But as you can see, our password is what we have written, but we shouldn't reveal our passwords like this, even if in this DB. So what we are gonna do is encoding our password. To do this, we are gonna use one more library, yarn add, and it's gonna be bcrypt.js. I'm gonna install. Actually, let's check how it works. As you can see, we are gonna import this first. By the way, it's a really popular Node.js library, so we are gonna use this too. And as you can see, to hash our password, we are gonna use this function. We are gonna generate our hashing method here, and after that, we are gonna use this function. It's gonna be our request body and password, and it's gonna give us our hashed password. Let's copy this. I'm gonna come here and let's say const first. This is gonna be our request body and password. And instead of this request body, we are gonna use hashed password. It's that easy. Let's try again. I'm gonna come here, John1, and I'm gonna send. Oops, we didn't import. Let's take this, import bcrypt from bcrypt.js. I'm gonna send again. User has been created, and let's check. And this time we have this hashed password, and it's much more secure right now. So what else we can do? We are gonna create login function. Let's say login, and here I'm gonna create, by the way, I should save this to use this login function. Login and login endpoint. Okay, what we are gonna do? Firstly, let's see. I'm gonna copy here and create new request. I'm gonna say login. Again, post method, and it's gonna be JSON. And I'm gonna paste it here. This time it's gonna be login. And what we are gonna send? We are gonna only send our username, John1, and password. Like that. So basically we are gonna take this username and try to find it inside our DB. So I'm gonna say, let's actually delete here. And I'm gonna say const user, and it's gonna be user dot. And I'm gonna say find or find one. Let's say find one, that because we have only one user with this username. And I'm gonna write here my condition. Username will be request body and username. And I'm gonna create a custom error here. I'm gonna say if there is no user, return next, and I'm gonna create error 404 user not found. And after that, if there is no error, we are gonna try to verify our password. That because in request and body it's 1 2 3 4 5, but in our DB it's this hashed password. So how we are gonna compare that? Let's come here, and as you can see, to check a password we are gonna use compare function, and it's gonna be our password, and we are gonna compare with hashed password. I'm gonna say const is password correct, and it's gonna be await again, that because it's an async function, bcrypt and compare function, and we are gonna send our request body, by the way, it's gonna be body and password, and we are gonna compare with our password here, and it's gonna be user.password. And again, I'm gonna create one more error here. If is password correct is not correct, if it's false, it's going to return 400 and it's going to be bad request. We can say wrong password or username. And finally, if everything is okay, we are going to send our user. Let's say JSON. Let's send. Let's see. Okay, I forgot await here. I hope that's the reason. Let's send again. Okay, wrong password or username. If I correct this, but if I write wrong username, user not found, if I correct them, it returns our user. Perfect. But as you can see, it returns this password also. In our React application, we are going to store this user, so we shouldn't send our password. To prevent this, what I'm going to do is writing here const, and I'm going to destructure my user. It's going to be password. By the way, we can delete this is admin also. That because in the client side, they can change it. Actually, we are going to use JWT, but in any case, let's write it also. And for other properties, we are going to use other or other details. And we are going to use it here. Of course, inside an object, we are going to spread other details. Let's see. As you can see, there is something strange here, that because our user object, it's inside user and underscore doc. So what I'm going to do is writing here doc, and let's try again. Okay, perfect. Right now we don't have is admin or password. But we didn't end yet. That because we are going to send JWT. To do that, we are going to add JSON web token. And basically, we are going to hide our user information in this JSON web token, and we are going to send it as a cookie. So whenever we make, let's say, update hotel API request, we are going to check first this JSON web token, and it's going to decide whether the user is admin or not. If it's not admin, we are going to send an error, and if it's admin, it will be able to update hotels or delete or whatever you want. Let's use JWT here, and if password is correct, we are going to create new token. Token is going to be JWT and sign, and inside we are going to give our information, whatever you want. But what I want is giving my user ID. It's going to be user.id. Remember, it's underscore ID. We are going to use it. And also, we are going to use isAdmin. It's going to be user.isAdmin. Basically, we are going to hash this information. And for each request, we are going to send this JWT to verify our identity. And one more thing we are going to need here, and it's going to be a secret key. You can write here any key, but let's generate here. I'm just going to generate a random key. You can use it in your Linux or Windows machines. Open SSL. Base 64. Okay, it's going to be our secret key. And again, we should hide this. So I'm going to go to .env and I'm going to say JWT secrets or directly JWT. And I'm going to use it here. Process, env, and JWT. And right now, let me shrink this. What I'm going to do is setting this token into our cookies. To do that, I'm going to install cookie parser. I'm going to say yarn add cookie parser. And inside index.js, we should use it as a middleware. I'm going to import. And here, let's say app.use cookie parser. Okay, let's send this. Before status, we can send this here. I'm gonna say .cookie and its name will be access token. And we are gonna pass our token here. And also we can write any configuration here. And the most important will be HTTP only. And it's gonna be true. Why we are doing this? That because basically it doesn't allow any client script to reach this cookie. So it's much more secure right now. And let's save and see. I'm gonna send. As you can see, user is here. And if I click on these cookies, as you can see, our access token is here. Perfect. Right now we are able to use this token. When we delete our hotel, we are gonna send this cookie and it's gonna verify our token first. After verifying, it's gonna check our user information, and if it's admin, we are gonna be allowed to delete this hotel. It's that easy. So what I'm gonna do is closing this authentication, and I'm gonna come here and copy those and paste for user, and we are gonna change those hotels. It's gonna be user. Let's change here. Users and users. It's exactly the same thing. Of course, we are not gonna create any user. We already have register function. Update user, delete user, get and get all users. Let's use them inside user root. Again, I can copy them and paste here. Where is users? Okay, here. And this time it's gonna be user. Let's delete here. Okay, let's import them. It's gonna be JS, by the way. Delete user, get user, and get users. Right now I'm gonna show you how we can verify our JWT. Let's come here and I'm gonna write request, and it's gonna be update user, put methods, JSON, and what I'm gonna do is changing my username. Username, it's gonna be John updated. Of course, we are gonna need our user ID, this one. I'm gonna write here localhost users and user ID. If I click on send button, it's gonna update, but I don't wanna do that. That's because firstly, we are gonna test our token. To do that, I'm gonna create new file inside these utils, and it's gonna be verify token. We are gonna need JWT and create error. Firstly, we are gonna verify our authentication. So I will say export const verify token, and it's gonna be request response next. And we are gonna take our token from our cookies. So I will say const token request cookies and access token. Remember, its name was access token. And if there is no token, it means we are not authenticated. So I'm gonna say return next, and we are gonna create new error. It's gonna be 401, and I'm gonna say you are not authenticated. If there is a token, it doesn't mean it's a correct one. We should verify this, and I'm gonna use JWT, and we are gonna use verify function, and we are gonna pass in token. Of course, we are gonna need our secret key, env and JWT, and after that it's gonna return us either an error or our information. Let's say user. Remember, it includes this information, and I set user for them. And I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna say if there's an error, it means verification is not successful, so we can return an error. I'm gonna say 403, and we are gonna say, okay, you have a token, but it's not valid. Token is not valid. But if there is no error, if everything is okay, we are gonna set new request property. I'm gonna say request.user, and it's gonna be our information. User ID and is admin. And pay attention here. You can write here whatever you want. It really doesn't matter. At the beginning, we don't have anything like that. We don't have user, and we can assign any new property here. And it's going to be our information. And after that, what I'm going to do is writing next. So it's going to run this middleware. If there is an error here, it's going to return. If there is no error, it's going to check our token. If everything is okay, we are going to go to next operation. So how we can use this? Let's come here and create another request here. I'm going to say get, and let's say check authentication. And I'm able to use my verify token middleware here. And after that, I'm going to say request, response, and next. So what it's going to do, I've already explained how middlewares work. Whenever we make requests for this endpoint, it's going to go to verify token. If everything is okay, it's going to say next, and we are going to come back here, and we are going to apply this next function. And I'm going to say response send hello user, you are authenticated or you are logged in. Let's try. I'm going to copy this and let's paste here. I'm going to send, of course, it should be get method. Hello user, you are logged in. That's because we have a cookie here. But if I edit this, let's change. In this case, token is not valid. Yes, we have a token here, but it's not correct. What if we don't have any token? I'm gonna delete. I'm gonna send, and this time 401, you are not authenticated. You cannot reach this data. And again, I'm gonna log in, and we have a cookie right now. And let's send, hello user, you are logged in. But what about if we try to delete or update our user? Of course, we are not going to do right now, but I'm just going to show how we can verify our user. I'm going to say check user, and I'm going to give here its ID. And I'm going to say, hello user, you are logged in, and you can delete your account. But this time, we are not going to use this middleware. Instead, we are going to create new one. I'm going to say const, of course, export const, verify user, request, response, next. And firstly, we are going to call this function. That because to verify our user, it should be authenticated first. We are going to send request, response, next. And I'm going to write here a callback function, and I'm going to write my condition. I'm going to say if request.user.id, we can use this user right now. And if it equals request params.id, remember, we are sending our user ID here. If it equals this user ID, which is inside JWT token, it means we are the owner. So I'm going to say next. And if it's not, we are going to send another error. It's going to be 403 again, but this time it's going to be you are not authorized. And in this case, the only owner of this user can delete account. But not only user, and also if request user is admin, they can also delete this user. So let's use this here. I'm gonna copy and paste. Okay, it's here. I'm gonna save. And that's all I think, by the way. We don't have next here, otherwise it's gonna go to user's root again. It's gonna take request, response. If everything is okay, it's gonna come back here again, and we are gonna check if it's the owner or not, or if it's an admin. If everything is correct, finally we are gonna go to users. So let's use this. Check user, and I'm gonna give ID here. Actually, let's give other users ID. I'm gonna copy and paste here. And let's check. I'm gonna send. As you can see, for all three, if I write my own ID here, I'm gonna send, and hello user, you are logged in and you can delete your account. And one more thing, we are gonna verify, and it's gonna be is admin. I'm gonna duplicate this and verify admin. And we are gonna verify our token again, but this time only condition will be request user and is admin. Let's try one more. I'm gonna say check admin. Hello admin, you are logged in and you can delete all accounts. Let's try. I'm gonna send. Oops, I forgot verify admin here. I'm gonna save again. Okay, we are not allowed to do that. But if I come here and change this, it's gonna be true. I will update. Of course, we should delete this cookie. It stores information that we are not admin. I'm gonna delete. And in this case, we have to log in again. I'm gonna log in. And let's try again. Hello admin, you are logged in and you can delete all accounts. Perfect. It's gonna work like that. So I'm gonna comment this out so it can stay in our GitHub repository. You can check. So what I'm gonna do is giving verification middlewares for them. Update user will be verify user. So owner or admin can update this. Same thing here. And again, get user. But for get all users, only admin can do this. So I'm gonna say verify admin, and that's all. So I'm gonna do the same thing for hotel. Let's close everything here, and I'm gonna come here. And for creating hotel, we are gonna be verify admin, or for update, delete. Everybody can get hotel or list all these hotels. So we don't need that here. And that's all. Let's import this, by the way. It's not coming. Utils and verify token. I'm gonna come here. And for this hotel, I'm gonna try to update. I'm gonna write updated. It's gonna be hotel ID. I'm gonna send. And as you can see, we have updated. If I delete this cookie, wait a second. It's coming here because of this next, I think. I made a mistake here. It should be next also. Let's see. Okay, it works. Let's log in again. We have a cookie here. I'm gonna try to update. Okay, it works. So we need this next here also. By the way, guys, if any error occurs here, I'm gonna update in the GitHub repository. If there is any mistake, we are gonna fix it. Don't worry. And that's pretty all. So let's create room model. I'm gonna come here and copy this and paste here. I'm gonna change this name. It's gonna be room model. And let's change here. Firstly, it's gonna be a title. It's gonna be string required. I'm gonna delete here. And second one will be room price. It's gonna be number required. And description, again string, and one more number is gonna be maximum people that can stay in this room. It's gonna be number and required. And finally, we are gonna have room numbers. And basically, it's gonna be an array, and it's gonna include all room numbers. What I mean by that? Basically, this room includes all room information. Let's say title, big room with 2 beds. We are gonna have price, maximum people 2, and some description. But we will be able to have more than one room like that. Imagine you have an hotel and the first floor has 20 rooms and all those rooms are the same. Their title is same, price same, maximum people same, and only difference is their room numbers. Basically, we are gonna add room number and its type will be number. And one more thing we are gonna add, and it's gonna be unavailable dates. So when somebody reserves this specific room, we are gonna add here unavailable dates. So nobody can reserve this room again. And it's gonna be array again, and each item will be date. Let me show you an example here. It's gonna be an array, and first room will be, let's say, number 101. And it's gonna have unavailable dates. By default, it's gonna be empty, and we are gonna have more rooms like that. 102, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's enough. And when somebody try to book or reserve one of these rooms, we are gonna come here and update one of them. Actually, there's a mistake here. Let's remember how we are doing. If you remember, we say type an array like this, which includes only strings. So we are gonna do the same thing. It's gonna be type, and this time it's gonna be date. So basically it's gonna be 1st of May 2022, 2nd of May 2022. It's gonna work like that. I hope you understood. So let's create quickly our controllers. First one will be create room, async, request response next. But this time we are gonna do something different, that because remember in our hotel model we have rooms here and it includes our room ID like a parent and child. So what I need is one more model here, and it's gonna be hotel. Basically, after creating a new room, we should add this room ID inside room array here. What I mean by that? Let's say const hotel ID. It's gonna be request params. We are gonna send this as a param. And let's say hotel ID. And I'm gonna say const new room. It's gonna be new room model, and it's gonna include request and body. Let's write here try catch block. If there's an error, next error. And what we are gonna try? Firstly, we are gonna save our room. I'll say const saved room and await new room, and we are gonna save it. And after that, I'm gonna create new try catch, that because we are gonna update our hotel. Next error. You don't have to write another try catch, by the way. And I'm gonna say await hotel and find by ID and update. Remember, our hotel ID is here. We can use it. And after that, we are gonna add this saved room ID inside hotel and rooms. To do that, we can use MongoDB push method. Basically, it allows us to push any item in any array. So I'm gonna say rooms, and what we are gonna push? We are gonna push saved room.id. And finally, we are gonna send our room. Response status 200 and JSON saved room. And others will be the same. Actually, let's copy and paste from here. There is nothing different. It's gonna be update room this time. We are gonna find by ID and update. We are gonna set new one. And finally, we are gonna return the newest version of our document, and we are gonna send it to user. And it's gonna be delete room, get room, and by the way, let's make this lowercase. and get rooms. Like that. Okay, let's write them here. Let's copy here, and for rooms, it's gonna be verify admin again. I'm gonna say create room. Let's import this also. When we update, we should be admin again. Update room, delete, get, and get all rooms. But remember, for creation, we are sending hotel ID. So what I'm gonna do is writing here hotel ID parameter, and we are gonna use it. Of course, JS. Okay, let's try. I'm gonna take this hotel. By the way, let's refresh. I'm not sure if it's still same or not. Okay, we have updated. So I'm gonna come here and say create room. It's gonna be post JSON, and I will say localhost rooms, but we are gonna pass here hotel ID, and I'm gonna write first title king room and description king size bed, 1 bathroom, and let's say for example balcony, and price will be 100. By the way, there is a comma here, and maximum people is going to be 2. What else we have? Price, maximum people, description, and room numbers. Room numbers is going to be an array, and in this array we are going to have each individual rooms. Let's say number. It's going to be 101. Let's create another one. Number 102. Let's create. Okay, as you can see, our numbers are here. 101, unavailable dates. Perfect. And if we go to any hotel here, let's say get all hotels, I'm gonna send. As you can see, our room number is here. By the way, when we delete our room, we should again update our hotel. We are gonna do this similar thing. I'm gonna take hotel ID, and we are gonna try catch and update our hotel. I will come here and paste, but this time it's gonna be pull, and we are gonna give here request params.id. Let's try. It was our room ID. I'm gonna create new request, and it's gonna be delete room, delete method. I'm gonna create localhost API rooms, and it's gonna be room ID, and it's gonna be hotel ID. Let's see here. This is our hotel. I'm gonna copy and paste here. Of course, we didn't create our root, so I'm gonna come here, and for delete method, it's gonna be ID and hotel ID. I'm gonna save, and let's try. I'm gonna send. Room has been deleted. Let's check our hotel here. I'm gonna send again. Of course, it's gonna be params. There was a mistake here. Let's delete that. I'm gonna delete this. Okay, let's create again, and let's try again. Create room. I'm gonna send. This is our room ID. And again, I'm gonna try to delete this room. I'm gonna copy, and I'm gonna paste it here. Let's send. Room has been deleted. Get all hotels. And as you can see, it's empty. Okay, perfect. So we have finished our backend server for now. Of course, we are gonna add some additional things. For example, for this hotel, we are not gonna only get whole hotels. And also we are gonna add here our limitations, our conditions like get by st, get by featured, or get only 10 items. But it can stay for now. Let's create our React application here. I'm gonna close here. Oh my god, forgot going into API. But don't worry, it's just 3 items. Let's say yarn add, bcrypt.js, cookie parser, and JSON web token. I'm gonna enter. It's gonna install those libraries, and after that we can delete them. Okay, it's ready, as you can see. So let's delete them. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is creating here a client folder, and inside this folder I'm gonna create my React application. Let's visit our GitHub repository. And here, as you remember, we have this branch which includes our UI. We are gonna clone this. To do that, I'm gonna choose this URL and I'm gonna use only this branch, React Booking UI. So let's get inside client and I'm gonna say git clone single branch. And I'm gonna write here my branch name, which is React Booking UI. And I'm gonna paste my URL. And I'll say dot and enter. And as you can see, our project is here. Of course, we don't have our libraries. I'm gonna basically say yarn. And it's gonna download all those libraries. Okay, it's ready. Let's start our application. Yarn start. And it's here. Perfect. And as you realize, here we are gonna need hotel numbers by city name. And here, again, we are gonna get numbers by its type. And finally, we are gonna get some featured hotels. So let's come here. Let's see what's inside our homepage. Actually, I'm gonna close everything here and I'm gonna shrink this. And let's open back. And as you can see, featured property list and featured properties. Featured property list and featured properties. So let's open this component. Featured. So basically, we are gonna get this number using this st. Okay, basically, we are gonna get some more endpoints. For this one, it's gonna be count by st, count by type, and we are gonna provide a query, and it's gonna take only featured hotels. So let's do that. I'm gonna come back here, and for routes, hotels, and it's gonna be 2 more. And let's say count by city name and count by type. Let's create our controllers. Let's duplicate this actually. It's gonna be count by st. And we are gonna have a query. What I mean by that? When we write here count by city, basically we are gonna add a query here. To do that, we are gonna use question mark. And we are gonna write here our query name, which is this, and we are gonna write here city names. Let's say Berlin, Madrid, and London. So how we are gonna use these cities? Let's come here, and I'll say const cities is gonna be request query and cities. By the way, there's a typo. And it's gonna return us this string. But I want to transform them into an array. To do that, we are gonna use split method, and we are gonna split them using comma. It's gonna split this word. And after that, it's gonna start here, stop, start, and stop. And it's gonna make them an array. And here, I'm gonna create a list. And I will say await, but this time we are gonna try to find multiple items, that because we are gonna have 3 STs here. So in this case, I'm gonna use promise and all. And for each STs, I will say map. We are gonna return hotel, but this time we are not gonna use find and st is st and its length. Of course, you can do this, but it might be a little bit expensive, that because it's gonna fetch all those data, their properties, and after that it's gonna find its length. So instead of that, we are gonna use MongoDB count document. And here I'm gonna say st is st. So it's exactly the same thing, but it's not fetching any property. It just shows its count, and it makes it much faster. And after that, we are gonna return this list. Let's try. By the way, we should call this here. Okay. Firstly, I'm gonna create some hotels. It's in Berlin, let's say Madrid, Hotel Jane 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be in London. Let's create. Okay, so I'm gonna create new request here. Get hotel count. Hotels is gonna be count by st, and actually we are gonna use this endpoint Berlin, Madrid, and London. I hope everything is okay. Let's send. Okay, there is a problem here. It's looking for an ID, but we are giving count by st. Why it's happening? That because, as you remember, we are using this ID for getting a single hotel here, and this Express server assumes that this is an ID because there is a slash here, and after there is some word, and it's exactly the same thing, slash and ID. To prevent this, what we can do, instead of only ID, we can just write any specific word here, like find. Okay, I'm gonna save and let's try again. I'm gonna send, and as you can see, Berlin is 1, Madrid 3, and London 1. So let's use it here. I'm gonna come back, and what I'm gonna do is creating a custom hook that we can make any API request and fetch data. So I will say hooks, and inside I'm gonna say use fetch. To fetch our items, we are gonna be using Axios. So let's create one more terminal here, and I'm gonna say cd client yarn at Axios. And let's create our function const use fetch, and it's gonna take a URL, and I'm gonna create 3 use state hook. First one will be our data. Data set data. It's gonna be use state hook, and at the beginning it's gonna be an empty string, and 2 more. It's gonna be loading, set loading, and error. And at the beginning they are gonna be false. So basically, when we make API request, the loading will be true, and after ending our request, if there is a data, we are gonna fill inside this data array. If it's not successful, the error will be true, or we can just pass whatever the error is. Okay, I'm gonna use effect, and whenever our URL changes, we are gonna fire this function. So I'm gonna say const fetch data, and it's gonna be an async function. And firstly, we are gonna set loading to true. We are starting, and we are gonna make API request right now. I'm gonna say const response, and it's gonna be Axios. It's gonna be get method, And we are gonna write here our URL. Of course, I forgot here writing try catch block. If there's an error, set error will be this error. So if there is no error, we are gonna set our data. Let's copy this. I'm gonna say response.data, and we are gonna call this function here, fetch data, and that's all. And of course, after this process, we are gonna set loading again, and it's gonna be false. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is creating one more function here, and it's gonna be refetch. Of course, we should cover this with this curly bracket. So if we need to refetch our data again, we are gonna use this function. So let's export them. I'll say return, we are gonna send data, loading, error, and refetch. And I'm gonna export my component, export default, and use fetch. By the way, they are gonna be await. Okay, let's use them inside our component. I'm gonna copy this, and I will say const data, loading, and error. We don't need this refetch, and it's gonna be use fetch hook. And we are gonna write here our API endpoint. Of course, you can say localhost 88 API and whatever you say, but instead we are gonna use proxy for that. I'm gonna come here and I will say proxy, and it's gonna be our main URL, which is localhost port number and API. I'm gonna save, and I'm gonna come back here. And right now I can write my endpoint. Let's copy here like that, and let's see what's gonna happen. I will say console log data, and as you can see, our data is here, 1, 3, and 1. So we can use them. I'm gonna delete here, and firstly I'm gonna create a condition here. I'm gonna cover them, and I will say, of course, we should write here React fragments, and let's close it here. And I'm gonna say if loading is true, we are gonna send loading, please wait. And if it's false, it means we have a data, so we can use those items. Let's shrink this, and instead of this one, I'm gonna say data and first element, and let's say it was Berlin or Madrid. Okay, Berlin. And second one will be data and second item, and third item. Of course, you can change its names and images here, but as you can see, they are here. By the way, guys, if you don't want to use React proxy, I highly recommend you to use Course middleware for your backend server. So I'm gonna open new terminal. It's gonna be API, and I'm gonna say yarn add course. Let's import this. Course from course, and we are gonna use it here. But it's not important for now, that because we are using proxy, so we are not gonna have any problem. And first component is ready. So let's do the same thing for this one. Let's come here. Okay, count by type, and let's create it here. I'm gonna duplicate, and it's gonna be count by type. Let's use it here. Okay, so what we can do, we can basically take types again inside our query, but I'm not gonna do this. It's not like city. We have infinite cities, but we have only 5 items. Basically, I can fetch all of them one by one. If you want to, you can use again this query and promise all, but I'm just gonna fetch them. Hotel count, and it's gonna be hotel count document, and type will be hotel. And I'm gonna do the same thing for others. Of course, they are gonna be inside try. And I don't need that anymore. Basically, I'm just gonna send them. Let's open here an array, and first item will be hotel, and let's say count. It's gonna be hotel count and others. Let's see, I'm gonna copy this and paste here. Let's delete this query, and I'm gonna send. Oops, there is something wrong. Again, I forgot await. I'm gonna send, and as you can see, we have 5 hotels and others are 0. Let's use this. I'm gonna come here and copy this, and for property list, I'm gonna use exactly the same thing. Use fetch, but this time it's gonna be count by type, and we are gonna use them here. I'm gonna cover this, React fragment, and if loading, just say loading. If it's not, just show those items. By the way, guys, instead of writing here any text, you can show skeleton loading components. To do that, you can watch my previous skeleton video. It's an awesome video that you can learn how to create animated loading components. I highly recommend it. Okay, so instead of writing them data 0, 1, 2, what I'm gonna do is creating here an array. Let's say const, let's say images, it's gonna be an array, and I'm gonna just pass those images here. I will just copy paste. Like that. So we don't need them. Let's delete everything, and I'm just gonna leave one of them, this one. And I'm just gonna cover this, and I will say if there is a data images dot map, and for each image I'm gonna return this div. Like that. And in this case we don't need this image anymore. We can directly use image like that, and I'm gonna write here data, and which element I'm gonna use. I can use its index. Remember, we have 5 items here, so it's gonna be index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We can use them. And remember what it returns, type and count. We are gonna use this one, dot count, and for here it's gonna be data I and type. I can use same thing here. Let's see. As you can see, hotels, apartments, and others, and their numbers. Perfect. By the way, for this item, we can make this first letter capital. So I'm gonna choose this H1. Let's open up CSS here. And I'm gonna say text transform is gonna be capitalized. I'm gonna save, and as you can see, they are uppercase right now. By the way, I'm gonna add here a unique key. If you are using map, don't forget to add here a unique key. So I'm gonna say just I. And also I'm gonna add here question marks just to make sure this data array is not empty. And that's all. I'm gonna refresh. Okay, everything looks good. So let's take care of these featured hotels. I'm gonna come here and open up my sidebar and featured properties. I'm gonna come here and copy this. Use fetch hook, and I'm gonna import. And right now we are gonna do something different. Let's check out our server, hotels, and as you can see, this is gonna be our endpoint, and in the controllers, get hotel, get all hotels, and we don't have any query here. Let's write, I'm gonna say request and query, and let's check. I'm gonna come here, get all hotels, I'm gonna delete here, and I'm gonna write my query. And it's gonna be featured property true. Let's send. Okay, it's empty. I think we don't have any featured property yet. Okay, it's false, false. Everything is false here. I'm gonna change some of them. Let's say true. Second one. Third one, and the last one. Let's see right now. I'm gonna send, and as you can see, all those featured hotels are here. And also we can give any limit here, like that. And in this case, we are gonna fetch only 3 or 4 items. Let's add this. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna say dot limit, and it's gonna be request, query, and limit. If I say 2, for example, it's gonna fetch only 2 of them. What else we can add here? We can add maximum or minimum price. That because in our application, we are gonna search for them, and after that we will be able to change price here. In this case, we can use the same endpoint, but how we can take the price between minimum and maximum. To do that, I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna say const. We are gonna take from request and query, but what I'm gonna do is taking here minimum and maximum, and also others. So basically, I just separated them. So I'm gonna come here, take others, other options. It can be featured, address, type, title, whatever. But minimum and maximum will be different. Cheapest room. Sorry, it was cheapest price. And I'm gonna write my condition here. I'm gonna say greater than minimum and less than maximum. If we do that, I'm gonna save and I'm gonna send. It's gonna cause this problem that because we don't have minimum and maximum price, what I can do, I can say minimum or 1, maximum, if there is no maximum, let's say this amount. Let's check right now. I'm gonna send, and perfect. So if I write here minimum, let's say 10, and maximum, let's say 200, I'm gonna send, and they are here. Okay, it works. So we can use this endpoint here. I'm gonna go to homepage. By the way, for this logo, we can use React Router DOM link. Let's open up navbar. And for this link, I'm gonna say link, and I'm gonna wrap this span, and I'm gonna import this. I'm gonna say import link from React Router DOM. In this case, I can give here any URL, so I'm gonna say to, and it's gonna be homepage. As you can see, its color is different. That's because it's a link right now. What I'm gonna do is coming here and giving inner style. Color will be inherit. Okay, it's white right now, but we have an underline here. Let's delete this. I'm gonna say text decoration, and it's gonna be none. Okay, perfect. So when I click here, we are going to homepage. Perfect. So let's fetch this data. I'm gonna close this, and I'm gonna come here, and I will say featured true, and I'm gonna give a limit. It's gonna be 4. I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. I'm gonna delete those 3 of them, and I will say here, if it's loading, just write here loading or whatever you want. If it's not, just return this div. I'm gonna go over here, And of course, we are gonna use map again, cover this, and I will say data.map, and for each item, just return this div. Of course, this curly bracket is here. Okay, I'm gonna give again my unique key, and this time we can use item and ID, and it's gonna be item.name. Let's copy this. It's gonna be item.city. It's gonna be cheapest price. And I'm gonna write here a condition. That's because by default we don't have any rating. And I will say if there is a rating, just show this div. And it's gonna be rating number. Like that. So what about this image? In our DB, we don't have any image yet. But if you remember, we are using an array here. So what we can do, we can take just the first item and we can use its image. So I will say item.photos and first item. Let's see. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna refresh. If you want to, you can write here a condition. If there is no image, just don't show them, but they can stay. That's because we are gonna upload images. And that's all for the home page, I think. It's working here and featured properties. Awesome. So what about this search bar? When I write here any city name, when I choose any date range here, I'm gonna search, and as you can see, we are gonna fetch one more hotel list here. And its API query will be city Madrid, minimum price and maximum price. Of course, at the beginning, we don't have them yet. But when I click on search button, we are gonna refetch our hotels. So let's do that. I'm gonna close everything actually. And let's open list. So I'm gonna write here my hook, use fetch. I'm gonna import. And here, hotels and city will be destination. Actually, I'm gonna use here a backtick, so I can use my JavaScript code inside. So I will say destination. And if you want to, you can give any limit here, but it can stay for now. Let's use this data. Where are our items? Okay, here. I'm gonna delete them and I'm gonna use map. I'm gonna say if it's loading, right here, loading text. If it's not, just return search item. But of course, we are gonna use map, data.map, and for each item, we are gonna return search item component. And of course, I'm gonna give unique key here, and it's gonna be item.id. And also, I'm gonna pass this item in this search item component. So we will be able to use hotel information. So let's open search item component. And I'm gonna take this item and again item.images. It's gonna be hotel name, item.name, item.distance. It was distance or not? Okay, it is. Title description. Okay, let's use here its description. Like that. And again, I'm gonna cover this and write my condition. If item and rating, you can show me this div, and this number will be item.rating. And it's gonna be the cheapest price. And what about this button? Again, I'm gonna use a link. Let's come here and say link from React Router DOM. And I'm gonna cover this. And finally, single hotel page. But of course, we are gonna use hotel ID. So let's say go to hotels page and single page. And here, use its ID. Let's see. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna search again. Okay, there's something wrong. Okay, I said hotel. It's gonna be hotels. Let's correct this. Okay, they are here. And when I click on this button, we are gonna go to this specific hotel page, and we are gonna fetch our data using this unique ID. But before, let's take care of this search button. As I said, we are gonna consider this minimum and maximum price. So I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna say to more use state. Let's say undefined, undefined. It's gonna be minimum and maximum, like that. And when I change them, okay, it's here. Where is our input? Okay, here. I'm gonna say on change event, I'm gonna set minimum. It's gonna be event, target, and value. Let's copy this and paste for the maximum one. And we are gonna set maximum. And for our button, I'm gonna write here on click method. Okay, here. I'm gonna say on click method. And we are gonna call handle click function. Let's create this. I'll say const handle click. And we are gonna use refetch function. But in this case, it's gonna fetch the same URL, but we don't have minimum or maximum. Let's write here. Minimum will be this minimum price, and maximum will be our maximum price. Let's see. Okay, it's happening that because it's taking this undefined as a string. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. If there is no minimum, it's gonna be 0. If there is no maximum, it's gonna be 999. Of course, you can change here. Okay, they are here. I'm gonna say, actually, they are in the same price. Let's change them. For this Madrid, I'm gonna change this price. It's gonna be 200. And for this one, let's say 300. And I'm gonna save. Let's try again. I'm gonna go to homepage and city name. Okay, 100 to 100 and 300. I'm gonna change here. Let's say from 50 to 150. And as you can see, it's here. By the way, it's changing immediately that because in our use fetch hook, let's open up here, use fetch. As you can see, for the use effect, the dependency is URL. It means whenever we change this URL, it's gonna refetch again. If you don't want that, you can delete this dependency. In this case, if I change here, as you can see, it's not coming. Only when I click on this button, it's gonna refetch, but it's not working. Let's see. Okay, there's a typo here. It's gonna be uppercase and here. Okay, let's try again. 0 to 200. I'm gonna search. As you can see, only this one is here. But actually, I'm not gonna delete this dependency. I think it's better when I change here, it's gonna fetch immediately. Let's say 250, and it's here. By the way, it's not fetching 200, that's because we set less than this amount. If you want to, you can say equal or less than. But anyway, it's not a big deal. Let's increase here, and let's choose this hotel. And what about this single page? I'm gonna close everything and I'm gonna open hotel page here. Let's quickly import our fetch function. And inside I'm gonna say hotels, and I'm gonna give my hotel ID, but we don't have yet. How I'm gonna reach this data? It's really easy. I'm gonna use location hook. Let's come here. I'm gonna say const location is gonna be use location hook. And if I say console log and location, as you can see, our path is here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna split this path name using those slashes, and I'm gonna take this last item. Let's do that. I'm gonna say const path, and I will say location I'm gonna use split method, and I'm gonna use slash here. And remember, we have 3 items here. That because we have 2 slash here, it's gonna be first item, second item, and third item. So if I write here 2, it's gonna give me hotel ID. Actually, let's write here ID, and I'm gonna use it here. Let's come here and use it. I will take this div. I'm gonna wrap with curly brackets, and I will say my loading condition. If it's not loading, it's gonna return this div, and I'm gonna use my hotel information here. It's gonna be data.name. Here is address. Here is distance. Cheapest price. And here, if you remember, we are using this image array, but we don't need this anymore. I'm gonna delete here. And I'm gonna say data.photos. Oh, okay, it's for slider. And also I'm gonna use it here. Data.photos. And what else? We have title here. And description. Let's save. Oops. Split is not a function. Oh, why you are here? I'm gonna paste this here. And also I forgot path name here. I'm gonna save. And let's refresh. Right now it's giving this error that because we don't have any image yet. Let's check. Line 90. I'm gonna come here. Okay, as you can see, I'm gonna come here and I will say question mark, which means if there is an image array. So I can do the same thing here. By the way, it's not gonna be source. It's gonna be directly our image. And here. Okay, let's see. And right now we have one more problem. That because I used wrong endpoint. Let's open up hotel router here. And as you can see, we should use find key before. I forgot that. I'm gonna come here and add here find. Let's refresh again. And right now it's here. Perfect. Of course, it looks a little bit strange that because we don't have any image and our address and description is really short. But anyway, it works. We are gonna add them later. But what about here? As you can see, it says 9 night and here. And according to this number, we should update this price. But we don't have our date range here. So what we can do? When we choose any date range here, we can pass it into hotel page. And we can use it here. But to do that, we should use app.js here and define our dates here and send to home page and hotel page. Basically, we are gonna need prop drilling. And it's not a good idea. The best thing is using a state management tool or React Context API. And I checked your comments in the previous video and most of people just want to use Context API. So we can do that. Let's come here and inside source folder, I'm gonna create one more folder and it's gonna be context. So let's create here our context. I'll say search context. First here, what I'm gonna do is creating here my initial state. And it's gonna include st. At the beginning, it's gonna be undefined. We are gonna have dates. It's gonna be an array. And we are going to have options. And remember, we have adult, undefined again, children, and room. So let's create our context. I'm going to say export const, and let's say search context. I'm using export, that because we are going to use it everywhere, that because we are going to use it in different components. So I will say create context, and our initial state here. So let's write here our actions. To do that, I'm going to create reducer. I'm going to say search reducer. It's going to be state action, and we are going to use switch case. And let's write here action type. And our first action type is going to be new search. So whenever we change our search information here, we are going to dispatch this action. You are going to understand better. And in this case, I'm going to say return action and payload. Basically, this payload is going to be our destination, date range, and options. And we are going to update them. And another case, and it's going to be reset search, for example. Oops, there is no colon here. I'm going to say return our initial state. It's going to be again undefined and empty array here. Basically, we are going to reset. And there's a warning here that because we don't use any default case, let's write here default. And we are just going to return our state. Okay, let's use this reducer in our context. I'm going to say export const search context provider, and I'm going to write here children. Basically, these children will be our components which we want to reach this data. We are going to wrap our application and you are going to understand better. Just wait for a second. And I'm going to say const state and dispatch. And it's going to come from our reducer. So we are going to use reducer hook and inside search reducer. And also our initial state, of course. So let's return our provider here. I'll say return search context and provider. And we are going to wrap our children. And I'm going to write here what we want to pass to children. It's going to be value. And we are going to pass city. It's going to be state.city. We are going to pass dates, state.dates. And finally, options. And also, we should pass this dispatch. That because when we update our search bar here, we are going to call this new search action. To do that, we are going to need this dispatch. And that's all, I think. So let's wrap our application. Basically, we are going to choose components that we want to use those states and dispatch function. In this case, we are going to need it here. We are going to need it here, and we are going to need in this single page. Basically, we are going to need it everywhere. We can just wrap our entire application with that. I'm going to say search provider, and I'm going to wrap my application like that. I'm going to save. So let's use it in our header component, and you are going to understand easily. So let's come here and I'm going to say const. We are going to use something here, but before I'm going to say use context. We are going to use our search context like that. And which value we are going to need here. As I said, when we change those states and when we click on this search button, we are going to update our state. In this case, we are going to need this new search action. To dispatch that, we are going to need this dispatch function. So I'm going to import this. Let's say dispatch, and let's use it here. When I click this button, I'm going to dispatch my new search action. So I will say type is going to be new search. And we are going to give a payload here. That because, remember, when we dispatch this action, we should return any payload. And it's going to be our new state. So basically, we can share our all information here, like destination, dates, and its date or dates. Okay, its date, and options. I'm going to save. And I'm going to go to hotel page, and I will do the same thing, but this time, instead of dispatch, we are going to fetch dates. That because, remember, in hotel page, we are going to need how many nights a user wants to stay. So I will come here and I'm gonna say use context. I'm gonna import them and we are gonna need dates. Let's see. I will say console log and dates. But it's gonna be a mistake there that because we are using date here. Actually, let's change this. Dates is gonna be like that because it's an array. I think it's a better naming. So it's gonna be dates again. In this case, we should correct our list. Remember, it was date. I'm gonna make this dates again. Why I use date? And that's all, I think. Oops, there is something wrong. In header, here I should fix them. It's okay, I think. I'm gonna save and let's see how it works. I'm gonna refresh this page. I'm gonna write here location. I'm gonna choose some dates here. Let's choose 2 adults. I'm gonna search and let's choose this one. And I'm gonna open my console. And as you can see, we have date here. So we can use them everywhere in our application, in every component. We can use dates, destination, or options. But how we are gonna calculate how many dates we have between the start date and end date? 4th of May and 7th of May. I'm just gonna copy paste my function. Like that. Basically, it's gonna subtract the starting date from ending date. And when we divided this by 1 whole day, this is the milliseconds per day. If we divide it by this, it's gonna give us day difference. Let's try. I'm gonna say console log, day difference, and inside we are gonna give dates, end date, and start date. As you can see, 3 days. 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7. Okay, awesome. We are gonna use it here. So instead of console log, let's say const days, and we are gonna use it here. Days, and here, and we are gonna make a calculation here. I will say days multiply by cheapest price, and also we can use room number. Remember, we can use options also here. Inside our context state, we are gonna have options, and inside options, we have room number. So we can use it here also. Options.room. Of course, it's gonna be data. And let's see. Okay, as you can see, 3 nights and $600. I'm gonna close here and I'm gonna choose one more time. Like that. And let's choose one more room. $200. And as you can see, oh, it's quite expensive. I want to try something here. From today to okay, I'm gonna choose maybe 20 rooms, and let's say Madrid again. It's gonna be insane. Let's use this one, the most expensive. Wow, it actually $43 million. So keep in mind, guys, if you want to stay 20 years in hotel chain, you have to pay this price. Of course, for 20 rooms. Okay. So one more thing we need to do. When we click on this button, we are gonna see available rooms and we will be able to choose them. But before, I want to create authentication context also, that because it's not gonna be opening for unauthenticated users. So let's create one more context. I will come here. Actually, I will just copy this and paste again. And I'm gonna say auth context. And I'm gonna change this name here, here, and here. It's gonna be authentication. And what we are gonna need here, let's delete them. We are gonna have user information. At the beginning it's gonna be null, and loading, when we try to click on login button, it's gonna be true, but at the beginning it's gonna be false, of course. And error, it's gonna be null. If there's an error, we can update this. So let's change them. I'm gonna delete them, and for first case, I'm gonna say login start. Basically, when we click on login button, we are gonna run this action type, and what we are gonna return, let's copy here. I'm gonna return this object. User will be null, loading will be true, error will be null. By the way, I deleted here default. That's why it's warning us. Okay. And second case, let's duplicate this. And third case, it's gonna be login success. And if it's successful, we are gonna pass here our user. So I'm gonna say action payload. And loading will be false. That's because we are ending our fetching process. Error will be null. And last one will be failure. And in this case, user will be null, loading will be false, but error will be action payload. Like that. And one more action I want to create, and it's gonna be logout. Basically, it's gonna be our initial state. User null, loading false, and error null. Okay. I'm gonna do the same thing, auth reducer, and here, let's say user, loading, and error. By the way, guys, when we log in, I just want to save my user into local storage. In this case, even if we refresh the page, we are not gonna be logged out. To do that, I'm gonna use useEffect here, and my dependency will be state.user. Because whenever it changes, we are gonna update our local storage. Let's say local storage, and set item, and item name will be user. Of course, this is an object, but we cannot store this in our local storage. It should be a string. So what I'm gonna do is using here JSON stringify and state.user. In this case, when we refresh our application, it's not gonna be null anymore. Firstly, we are gonna look inside our local storage. This time, in our local storage, it's gonna be a string. And again, we should parse it. So I will say JSON parse local storage, and this time we are gonna use get item name, and that's all. It's gonna check our local storage. If there's a user, it's gonna use it. If there is no user, it's gonna be null. Okay. Let's wrap our application with this context provider, and after that we are going to create our login page. I'm going to open up index here, and I'm going to write here auth context provider. Let's import this and wrap our application like that. That's all. Let's create here login page. Login.jsx and CSS. Let's create our function and import our CSS file. So what I'm gonna do is creating my credentials using useState. So I will say const credentials set credentials, and it's gonna be useState hook. And at the beginning, it's gonna be username, undefined, and password. So which values we are gonna use here? We are gonna use loading, error, and dispatch. Let's do that. I'm gonna say const loading, error, and dispatch. It's gonna come from use context hook and auth context. So let's create here our class name first. It's going to be login, and inside I'm going to create a container. Let's say L container, login container. It's going to be 2 inputs. Let's say L input. First one will be text, placeholder username, ID will be username, and on change, and let's say handle change. And I'm going to create one more, but this time it's going to be a password. Placeholder will be the same, and ID. And after that, we are going to have a button. Login button, and it's going to be login. And if there's an error, after login operation, we are going to show a span here, and it's going to show us our error message. Okay, let's create this function. Const handle change. So let's set our state here, set credentials. I'm gonna take the previous value. If you are following my tutorials, you already know how we are using it. We are gonna return the previous value and credential name. To do that, we are gonna use its ID. Remember, we have password and username, so we can use them like that. Event target.id, and it's gonna be event target and value. Okay, right now we have username and password. We can create onClick method and we can dispatch our actions. So I will say onClick, and let's say handle click or handle login. I'm gonna say const handle click. I will say event prevent default. If you don't do that, it's gonna refresh your page. By the way, I'm gonna say async function, that because we are gonna make API request, let's dispatch our first action here. And its type will be login start. If you remember, we are not passing any payload here. It just updates our loading state. And after that, we are gonna try catch. And we are going to catch this error. If there's an error, we are going to dispatch error action. Its type will be login failure, and payload will be error, response, and data. And for try block, I'm going to say const response. I'll say await. We are going to use Axios, and post method login endpoint. And we are going to pass our credentials. And after successful operation, we are going to dispatch our other type here. Let's say type login success, and payload will be response and data. Let's see actually our user here, if it works or not. I will say console log user. Of course, we didn't create any login route. Let's come here. I'm going to create one more route here, and it's going to be login. Like that. Let's see. I'm going to say login. Okay, it's here. Let's remember what we have here. Okay, John 1. And as you can see, it's null right now. I'm going to say John, my password. Let's say different username here. I'm going to login. As you can see, 404, and it says user not found. And if it's correct but password is wrong, I'm gonna log in, wrong password or username, and if it's correct, it's gonna return us our user. By the way, let's give some style here. I'm just gonna copy paste. There is nothing important here. As you can see, something like that. So what I want to do is, if it's successful, I just want to be redirected to home page. To do this, we can use navigate hook. I'm gonna come here and I will say const navigate. It's gonna be use navigate, and if it's successful, I just want to navigate to home page. By the way, we can use this loading to disable our button. I'm gonna say disabled if it's loading. Let's try again. John 1 password. I'm gonna log in and we are going to home page. So even if I refresh the page, if I go to application and local storage, as you can see, our user is here. Perfect. In this case, we can use this user, and according to this user, we can delete these buttons or this one. Let's do that. I'm gonna come here and let's delete this actually. And this user. Okay, I'm gonna copy here. And for navbar, I'm gonna paste. Of course, we are gonna need only user here. Use context. Auth context. And I'm gonna write my condition. I will wrap here and I'm gonna say, if there is no user, show this div. Like this. And if there is a user, actually we can use our username. Let's delete this and write here condition user.username. If there is no user, we are gonna see those buttons. Of course, we don't need here curly brackets. We are already in the JavaScript. Like that. Perfect. If you want to, you can create here logout button. And when you click on this, you can dispatch logout action. And let's do the same thing for header. Let's paste it somewhere here. And I'm gonna take this user. And for this button, I'm gonna use it. Like that. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, let's write here our destination again. Let's choose some dates here. I'm gonna search. Let's choose this one. And right now, when I click on this button, we are gonna create a condition again. If there is no user, we are gonna go to a login page. If there is a user, we are gonna open here a modal that we can choose our rooms. I'm gonna close everything and I'm gonna open up hotel page again. And for this button, let's create another onClick. And I'm gonna say handle click. I'm gonna write it here. Handle click. Of course, I'm gonna need to import user first. Auth context. And let's write here our condition. If there's a user, do something here. If there's no user, just navigate to. Of course, we are gonna need navigate also. Let's write somewhere here, const navigate, use navigate hook. I'm gonna take this and we are gonna navigate to login page. What about if there is a user? As I said, we are gonna open a modal. So let's create one more use state here. Remember, this is our slider modal open and close state. I'm gonna create one more and it's gonna be, let's say, open book, or let's say just modal. And if there's a user, we are gonna open this, set open modal. It's gonna be true. Like that. Let's create here our condition. I will say if it's open, show me my modal. But to do that, we can create one more component. Let's say reserve JSX. It's gonna be CSS, my function here, and CSS. Let's give class name. And we are gonna take a prop here, and it's gonna be set open. That's because in this component, we will be able to close our modal again. And one more thing we are gonna need, and it's gonna be hotel ID. That's because we are gonna fetch our rooms in this page. So we are gonna need it. And let's come here and call our component reserve. And I'm gonna pass my props here. Set open will be set open modal, and hotel ID will be just ID. Remember, it comes from this location, so we are gonna use it here. Let's try. As you can see, there is nothing. I'm gonna click and it's here. Okay, of course it's gonna be position absolute and we are gonna move this here. Let's do that actually. I'm gonna create here a container, let's say reserve container. To close this modal, we are gonna need a button. To do that, we are gonna use font awesome. And icon will be exactly the same icon that we have used before. It's gonna be circle X mark. Let's import this here. And I'm gonna give a class name. Let's say R close. And finally, I'm gonna give on click. And set open will be false. Of course, a function here. Okay, I'm gonna click. It's here. When I click here, it's gone. Let's write here a span and it's gonna be select your rooms. So let's fetch our hotel rooms. To do that, I'm gonna go to root here, and as you can see, we don't have yet. So what I'm gonna do is creating here another get request, and it's gonna be room, and we are gonna pass here hotel ID. So let's create our function here inside hotel. I'm gonna say export const get hotel room, actually rooms. It's gonna be async request response next, try catch block, error and next error. Firstly, I'm gonna find my hotel. I will say const hotel. It's gonna be hotel model and find by ID. I'm gonna pass here my ID, which I added inside request and params. And let's remember what we have here. As you can see, we have rooms and it includes room IDs. So according to this ID, we can fetch our rooms. So let's do that. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna use promise all, that because we have multiple rooms. So I will say const list and promise all. Of course, it should be await. And I will say hotel rooms. It was room or rooms. Okay, rooms. And I'm gonna use map. And for each room, remember it's an ID. We are gonna return our rooms. Room model, but it's not coming. Let's import here. I'm gonna duplicate this and it's gonna be room. And again, find by ID, and this time we are gonna pass this ID. Let's use it here. I'm gonna import and let's try in our API tool here. I'm gonna say new request, get hotel rooms, localhost hotels room and its ID. Let's see our hotels here. Let's choose this one, but we don't have any room. That's because we didn't create. In this case, it's not gonna return anything. By the way, we didn't return anything. Let's say response 200 JSON, and we are gonna return this list. So for this hotel, we are gonna add some rooms. This is hotel ID, remember, we are creating room. That's because if I open room and create room, as you can see, we are taking hotel ID and creating new room. So let's do that. Okay, first one, 2 bedroom, like that, and another room. Let's say 101, 102. I'm gonna send. Let's see. And it's here. Okay, perfect. So if I come here and say get hotel rooms, and if I send, oops, it's still same. Why I am forgetting this waits. I'm sending and they are here. Perfect. So we can use this endpoint and we can show our rooms and their numbers. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna use fetch hook. and URL. It's gonna be hotels, room, and hotel ID, like that. And I'm gonna use it here. I will say data.map, and for each item inside, we are gonna return another div, and it's gonna be reserve and item. Let's say item info, and we are gonna have title, description, maximum people information. Let's say our title, description, and max people. Like that. And it's gonna be item.title, item.description, and maximum people. Actually, let's do like that. Max people. And we are gonna show this inside bold text, like that. Okay, let's see actually. I'm gonna come here and open. Okay, it's wrong hotel. It was in Berlin. I'm gonna open and they are here. Okay, perfect. Of course, we have a lot of issue that because we didn't create our hotels and rooms properly. I'm just trying to be quick, otherwise this video will be really long. But anyway, it works. Our items are here. Right now we are going to show their room numbers and we will be able to select them. Actually, let's create one more and it's going to be price, reserve price. And after this div, I'm going to create one more. And it's going to be, let's say, just room. And inside, I will say item room numbers. Because remember, they have room numbers and inside the actual number and unavailable dates. We are going to use them. I'm going to say map for each room number. Let's create here a label and it's going to show room number dot number, and we are going to have input that user can choose any room. So let's say input type will be select. By the way, I'm going to move this room here. And value will be room number dot ID. That because, again, let's remember, each room number has different ID. We are gonna use them. And I'm gonna use onChange method here. When we select them, we are gonna change selected rooms. So let's say handle select. I'm gonna create this here. Const handle select. Of course, it's gonna be event. But how we are gonna set this? Of course, we are gonna need use state here. I'm gonna say const selected rooms and set selected rooms. It's gonna be use state, and at the beginning it's gonna be empty. And let's create our logic here. I'm gonna say const selected, and we are gonna check if it's selected or not. To do that, we can use event target and checked. So when I click, oops, by the way, I said select, it's gonna be checkbox, of course. I need to take a break, I think. My brain doesn't work anymore. So when I click here, it's gonna be checked. We are gonna need our values. So I will say const value is gonna be event target and value. And remember, its value is gonna be its ID. And we are gonna set our state. I'm gonna say set selected rooms, and I'm gonna write my condition. If it's checked, take the previous rooms. Additionally, add here one more ID. And if it's not checked, we are gonna filter our previous selected rooms, and we are gonna pull our room ID from these selected rooms. So I will say filter, and for each item, we are gonna check if item doesn't equal our value, which is room ID, they are gonna stay. If it's equal, we are gonna move out this value. By the way, it's gonna be checked. Okay, let's see actually. selected rooms. I'm gonna open my console. I'm gonna click here, and as you can see, this ID is here. When I click again, it's gonna be empty. I'm gonna add these, those. Okay, it's working. Perfect. And after all of those, I'm gonna create a button. Let's say button, R button, and reserve now. And I'm gonna create on click event here. And I will say handle click. Let's create here const handle click. And we are gonna make one more request. Basically, we are gonna update this unavailable date. To do that, we are gonna need our selected dates. It's really easy. The only thing we should do is using use context. I'm gonna say const dates. It's gonna be use context and search context. Okay, we have dates, but this date is a range. Remember, we can choose it like that from 3rd to 10th, but we are gonna need all these dates here. So I'm gonna create here a function. Let's say get dates in range. It's gonna take start date and end date. And I'm gonna create one more date here. And it's gonna be exactly the same date with the starting date. That because we are gonna create a loop, and after each operation we are gonna increase this date until it equals or less than this ending date. So let's say new date. I'm gonna add here starting date, and I'm gonna say get time. Let's create our loop. I will say while if date less or equal ending date, we are gonna create a list and we are gonna push our dates inside. Let list is gonna be an empty array for now, and inside this loop list.push and our date. And after that we are gonna increase this date.setDate, date.getDate +1. Okay, and finally we can return our list. Let's see, actually I'm gonna say console log. Inside this function I'm gonna add my starting and ending dates. Let's click here. Okay, there is an error here. To prevent this, you have to use new date all the time. Let's actually write here const start and new date is gonna be our start date. Let's say start date and date, and one more. I'm gonna say end date, and it's gonna be end. And let's try right now. I'm gonna write again 4 to 7. I'm gonna click. This get time is here. I'm sorry. It should be here. This time it's gonna work, I think. We don't need them, but they can stay in any case. I'm gonna write one more time. I hope this time it's gonna work. 4 to 7. And I'm gonna open my console. And as you can see, our dates are here from 4 to 7. But if I write here get time, it's gonna give me these timestamps. So it's easier to compare dates because all dates are not the same. But if you are using timestamps, it's much easier to handle them. Okay, we are gonna use them and we are gonna update these unavailable dates. But before, I want to do something more here. That because we are not sure that those rooms are available or not, we should check them first. Otherwise, a user can order same room. To prevent this, let's create here another function. By the way, instead of console log, I can say const all dates. And what I'm gonna do, I will say const is available. And we are gonna take room number. And we are gonna check if those unavailable dates include any of those dates or not. if it includes, what we are going to do is adding disable HTML attribute here. So we cannot select this. So I will say const is font is going to be room number and unavailable dates. I'm going to use some method. It's going to check whether it includes some of them or not. And I will say date. And we are going to check all dates. And if it includes any of our dates inside our DB, we are going to set a flag here. Of course, remember we are using get time here. We will do the same thing here to compare easily. So I'm going to say new date, and we are going to pass our date here, and I'm going to say get time. And finally, we are going to return this found, but I'm going to return the opposite of this. That because if it includes, it's going to be true, but if it's true, it means it's not available. That's why I'm using like that. So I'm going to come here for our input. I'm going to say disabled if it's not available. And I'm going to pass here my room number. Let's create our CSS. It's going to be easy to see. Firstly, I'm going to say reserve. It's going to be full screen, 100 VW, 100 VH, and I'm going to give background. It's going to be black, but I'm going to reduce this opacity, of course. It's going to be a modal, and let's say position fixed. If you watched the previous video, you already know how to create modal. So I'm going to center everything like that, and I'm going to give some style for this container. Let's say background color white. I'm going to give some padding, and position will be relative. That's because we are going to use close button. Remember, it was our close, and I'm going to make this position absolute. Top 0, right 0, and cursor will be pointer, like that. So what about each item here? I'm going to say display flags, align item center. Let's give gap between them. And I'm going to give some padding, like this. And for this info, it's going to be display flags, flags direction column. I'm going to give gap. I'm going to give some font weight for those texts. I will just copy paste here. There is nothing important. It's bolder, it's thinner. And finally, for this button, I will use exactly the same button as we always use, like this. By the way, for these rooms, we can decrease these numbers and we can make here display flags. To do that, I'm going to create, let's say, select rooms. It's going to be a container, like that. Let's use it. I will say display flags. Flags wrap will be wrap, because if we have many room numbers, we are going to move it to another line. So let's give a gap here. I'm going to decrease the font size, like that. Maybe color. And for each room, display flags, flags direction column, like that. Okay, it looks pretty good. It's a fixed div. Perfect. As you can see, none of them are disabled right now. So let's make a request. When we click this button, we are going to update our rooms. I'm going to come here. It's going to be async, of course. I will say try catch block. Let's write here await, and again we are going to use promise and all. That because we are using map here. And I will say selected rooms, and for each room, let's say room ID, I'm going to say const response. We are gonna make Axios call here, and I will say put, and we are gonna update our rooms. But we don't have this endpoint right now. Let's come here. Actually, let's open our root here, and I'm gonna create one more put, and it's gonna be update availability or directly availability, and it's gonna be room number. By the way, it's not gonna be admin. That's because users can do that. Let's create. I'm gonna go to room here and one more update. But I'm gonna say update room availability. Let's pass this here and import. And I'm gonna delete here. Firstly, I'm gonna find my room using its room number ID. Remember, we are updating here, not our room. So we are gonna use this ID, we are gonna find this room number, and we are gonna update these unavailable dates. To do that, I will say await room, and I will say updates 1. Again, we are not using find by ID and update that because we are not updating our room, we are updating room number. Okay, so I'm gonna pass here room number dot ID, and it's gonna be request params and ID that we pass here. And after that, we are gonna push some date inside this unavailable date. I'm gonna copy this, and I'm gonna say push, and I'm gonna say room numbers. By the way, it's not number, it's gonna be numbers. And I'm gonna use here dot, $, and dot again, and unavailable dates. I know this is strange, but this is how it works. If you are updating nested properties, you have to write it like that. Of course, you can create more models like main room and each individual rooms, and you can connect them by using their IDs. But I especially wanted to show this because I want you to learn some advanced methods about MongoDB. Okay, what we are gonna pass? We are gonna pass request, body, and dates. Let's update this. I'm gonna copy this. Let's duplicate this, and I'm gonna say add date, this ID. It's gonna be availability and rooms. It's gonna be put method. I'm gonna write here dates, and inside this, let's actually put this date. And one more. It can be same, doesn't matter. I'm gonna send. Has been updated. Let's check here. I'm gonna send back, and as you can see, our dates are here. Okay, perfect. So we can use this endpoint. I'm gonna come here, and I will say rooms, availability, and of course we should use backtick, and room ID. And which dates we are gonna send? Dates will be all dates. Remember, it takes all dates between our starting and ending point. By the way, I'm gonna delete this, and I'm gonna return response and data. Actually, we don't need that, but what's wrong here, by the way? Promise all. Okay, I should close it here. Okay, and after this I'm gonna take a break. That's because I'm making a lot of mistakes right now, so I want to check one more rooms availability, room ID, all dates. I hope it's okay. Let's check. I'm gonna choose this one, and I'm gonna reserve. Okay, there is no error. Has been updated, and I'm gonna come here, and I'm gonna choose one more time, and I'm expecting that it's gonna be disabled. Let's choose. And as you can see, it's disabled right now, so we cannot choose this. Perfect, it works. So what else you can do? When we click on this button, you can redirect to another page and show their rooms, maybe cancellation button, maybe payment page. I'm not gonna deep dive into that much, but I can write here set open, and it's gonna be false. We are gonna close our modal, and maybe we can go to home page. We are gonna need navigation, of course, const navigate, use navigate, and we are gonna go to home page. Let's choose this one, reserve now, and we are here. Perfect. And it's enough for this client side, I think. We can search, we can choose rooms, we can reserve, and let's create admin page. I'm gonna take a break for a while, and I'll see you then. Okay, right now what I'm gonna do is creating here a new folder, and it's gonna be our admin panel. And inside this folder, I'm gonna say cd admin, and I'm gonna clone this branch. To do that again, I'm gonna copy this URL, git clone single branch, react admin, and this URL, and I'm gonna import them in this folder and enter. Let's see. Okay, they're here. Right now I'm gonna install my libraries. I'm gonna say yarn, and it's ready. Let's start our application. Yarn start. Okay, it's here. Right now I want to create my login page, and we are gonna create authentication context again. Let's see what we have inside. Pages. We have login, but we don't have anything here. Actually, we can just copy and paste login component from our client side. Let's come here. Page, login, and here. Okay, I'm gonna copy here and paste for my admin panel. Like that. But as you can see, we are using Sass here, so I'm gonna say as CSS. We don't have any authentication content right now. I can comment this out for now, and we are gonna import Axios. I will say cd admin yarn add Axios. And we are gonna use exactly the same authentication context. So we don't have to create again. I'm gonna come here, copy this, and paste inside my admin context. Like that. Okay, let's wrap our application. I'm gonna copy this provider and open up index.js, and I'm gonna wrap my application with this provider. Let's import. Okay, it's almost ready, but we should provide some security for our admin panel. That's because if we are not admin, we are not supposed to see this page. So when I refresh my page, I should be redirected to login page. How we are gonna do this? I'm gonna import this, by the way. And okay, let's open up our app.js, and as you can see, we are using React Router DOM, but we don't have any protected root. Let's create here. I'm gonna say const protected root, and we are gonna take here a children. That because we are gonna wrap our roots with this protected root. For example, for index page, we are gonna wrap this component. So if we are not the admin, we will not be able to go to this page. Firstly, I should import user from my context. I'll say user, use context, and auth context. Okay, but there's a problem here. Even if I log in as a normal user, we are gonna see this object. So what I'm gonna do is going to API, controllers and authentication. And as you remember, we are passing these other details and it doesn't include password and is admin. We are doing this because we are storing these other details. But what I want to do is passing here is admin property also. But don't worry, we are not going to store this. After login process, we are going to store these details, but we are going to need this admin property. So I'm going to come here. And as you remember, we are using navigate hook here. And after successful login operation, we are going to home page. But I'm going to create a condition here. I'm going to say if response data is admin, we are going to dispatch this action and we are going to go to home page. If it's not admin, I'm going to create one more failure dispatch here. And I'm going to say message, you are not allowed. Okay. And here we are not going to store all these data. We are just going to store these other details. By the way, let's say here details, and we are going to store these object. Let's say details. By the way, I should do the same thing for client application. Let's come here, login. It was response and data. It's going to be data and details. Okay, I can close here. And let's create our protected root. I will say if there is no user, which means if there is no admin, we are going to navigate to login page. Return navigate from React Router DOM, and it's going to be login. And if there is an admin, we are going to return our children. Okay, let's use this in our home page and let's check. I'm going to wrap this. By the way, I'm going to take this login somewhere here. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go to console and I'm going to delete my cookies and local storage. That because we are using here same port. So we have still user here. Clear and clear. Of course, you can use another port number, but anyway, I'm gonna refresh this page, and as you can see, we are in the login page. It doesn't allow us. Perfect. By the way, let's add our CSS here. It's exactly the same CSS, as you can see. Let's try some wrong username here. I'm gonna log in, but of course, we didn't create our proxy. Let's come here. I'm gonna say proxy. Localhost, port number, and API. Okay, let's restart our application. Oops, it's not here. It's gonna be here. I'm gonna terminate and start again. Okay, let's try. Login and user not found. John 1. My password. And we are going to homepage. Perfect. Of course, our password is really weak. Don't worry about this. So what I'm going to do is doing same thing for other routes for this list. Okay, I created for all of them, so we can continue. I'm not gonna take care about here that because we are not selling anything. It's just an reservation app. So I'm gonna go to users page here, and as you can see, we have data here. It means we are gonna fetch some data. Not for only users, we are gonna fetch for hotels, rooms. Basically, we are gonna need use fetch hook again. Okay, client side, source, and hooks. I'm gonna copy here and close, and I'm gonna paste for my admin source. Okay, we are gonna use this. Let's close everything here, and I'm gonna go to data table here. By the way, if you didn't watch my previous admin panel tutorial, I highly recommend you to watch it before getting started, otherwise it can be hard to understand some parts here. Okay, anyway, let's remember what we have here. We are using Material UI data grid here, and we are passing our fake data, those users, and also for these columns, we are using data table source. As you can see, user columns, all those properties, and our fake data. As you can see, it's temporary. We are not going to use it anymore. We can delete. But the important part is here. That's because here we have user image, username, email, age, status. We can change them. But in our application, let's open up API and user model. As you can see, we have only username, email, and password. So I'm going to create some more property here. Like that, country, string, profile picture, city, and phone number. So let's create some users. I'm gonna say country, let's say USA, city, New York, and phone number. Like that. Let's create. Okay, there is a problem here. It says they are required. That's because if you remember, in our authentication controller, we are taking only username, email, and password. That's because we are using hash password here. So basically I can delete here, and instead I can say request and body. So it's gonna take all those properties here. And additionally, it's going to take this password and create new password here, hashed password. Okay, let's try again. I'm going to send. Okay, we are already using John 1. Let's change this. 3. I'm not sure we are using or not. Okay, it's here. Let's create a couple more, but we can use some images. Let's open up pexas.com. Of course, in admin panel, we are gonna create our own users and upload our own images. But for now, to see our list better, we are just gonna create some users. I'm gonna send 5. Okay, it's enough. So let's fetch our data. I can close here and go to data table again. So instead of this data, I'm gonna delete here. We are gonna use fetch hook. Const data loading error. Use fetch hook, and our endpoint will be users. Why it's not coming? Okay, let's import. Import use fetch. Hooks and use fetch. I'm gonna comment this out, by the way. We are gonna handle this later. And what I'm gonna do is changing my table source here. Okay, first one will be image, username, it can stay, email, it's okay also. I'm gonna add here country. Let's add 2 more. It's gonna be city and phone. As you can see, there's a problem here. Let's open console. And it says all rows have to have a unique ID. But in our application, we don't have any because in this fake data, we were using those IDs. But in our MongoDB, they are not ID, they are underscore ID. So by default, it cannot take this ID. So what I'm gonna do is writing here get row ID, and I'm gonna pass my ID manually. So I'm gonna choose each row. For each item, it's gonna take their IDs. Let's save. And as you can see, they are here. Perfect. What else I can do here? As you can see, they don't have any image. I can write a condition. I'm gonna open my source again. And for those columns, as you can see, we are using this image. But I will say if there is no image, use this URL, which is no avatar image. Like that. And also, I'm gonna delete this status. I forgot that. We don't need any status. Okay, perfect. But how we are gonna delete those items? If you remember the previous admin tutorial, we are passing our item IDs. By the way, this time we are gonna pass underscore ID. And here we were filtering those items. But we cannot filter this data. We can basically create one more use state here. Let's say const list set list. It's going to be use state. At the beginning, it's going to be an empty array. And whenever our data changes, we are going to update this list. Let's write here use effect. I'm going to say data. And whenever it changes, we are going to update set list, and it's going to be data. So instead of this data, we can use list here. And whenever we delete our items, we can filter this list. So I'm going to say set list. It's going to take list and filter this item. So when we choose any item, we are not going to see this anymore. But also, we should delete this item from our MongoDB. To do this, I'm going to write try catch block here, and we are going to handle delete method. By the way, let's write here async function. And we are going to use Axios. I'll say await Axios. It's going to be delete method. We are going to use our endpoint, but this data table is common component for users, hotels, and rooms. So I cannot write here directly users or here. So what I'm going to do is deciding which page I'm in. To do that, we can use this location. Remember how we are doing this? We can take our path. We did this a couple times, so I'm just going to copy paste. You already know how to do this. We are going to take our path, and according to this path, we can fetch our data and delete data. So I'm going to write here path, of course, slash here. So it's going to fetch users for this page. And when we go to hotels page, it's going to fetch hotels. So I will do the same thing here. I'm going to say path, and we should give here our ID. It's already here. We can use it here. So it's going to delete this item. And if it's successful, we are going to filter our item. Let's try. I'm going to delete this John 5. I'm going to click here. Okay, I had to refresh this page. Okay, that's because it should be underscore ID. Let's try to delete this one. Okay, it's gone. And when I refresh this page, as you can see, it's not in our DB anymore. Perfect. So let's do the same thing for hotels. By the way, it's products. We are going to change them. Let's open up. It was sidebar, I think. Okay. It's going to be hotels. I'm going to change here. And one more, it's going to be rooms. Of course, I'm going to wrap this also like that. And its link will be rooms. Let's try. I'm going to click here, and it's going to be an error that because we are using user columns, as you can see. So how we can make this dynamic? Of course, we can use this location, and we can say if it's users, use users columns. If it's hotels, use hotel columns. And also we can pass it in our app.js here. Let's do that. For this user list, I'm gonna say columns, and it's gonna be user columns. And I can do the same thing for hotels and rooms, but we don't have here. Let's create like that, hotel columns and room columns. By the way, I can delete this user rows. We don't need this anymore. Okay, as you can see, we have hotel name, type, title, and city. And for rooms, title, description, price, and maximum price. Of course, it should be lowercase, so we can pass them. I'm gonna take this, and for products, of course, it's gonna be hotels, and I'm gonna pass here hotel columns. So let's use them. I'm gonna come here and take this prop, and I'm gonna update this. Okay, it's not here, that because we are passing to list page. Of course, we should take this here. We are prop drilling, but anyway, it's not a problem. It's just two components. Okay, perfect. We can increase this ID maybe. Table source, and I'm gonna make this 200. Let's try. Maybe 50. Okay, it's better. And let's increase this name also. It's not that important, but anyway, it looks better. So let's delete this last one. Okay, it's not here anymore. I'm gonna refresh. Okay, perfect. So you are gonna do exactly the same thing for rooms. But for now, let's try to create new user. I'm gonna come here, and as you can see, again, we are using some data here. Let's see. We have form source, and inside we have user inputs, product inputs. So I'm gonna update here again. I'm not doing this one by one, that's because it can take time. I just copy paste, and you can find this source in our GitHub repository. As you can see, user information, hotel information, and room. But we are gonna have something different here. That because, for example, for this user page, we are gonna upload only one image. And also we are just gonna use those text inputs. But for hotel page, we are gonna upload 6 items here. And we are gonna have some selects that we can choose hotel rooms, or we can choose whether it's a featured hotel or not. So basically, using a single page for all of our models is not a good idea, I think. Of course, we can still do, but this page will be really messy. I don't want to do this. So basically, I'm gonna create 2 more new page. And first one will be new hotel. New hotel CSS, actually SCSS. Let's come here, and I'm gonna change here, new hotel, and export. And I'm gonna do the same thing for room page. It's gonna be new room, JSX, and CSS. And again, let's update here and let's get started. Okay, so I'm gonna close everything here, and we are gonna start with new user page. Why this input is here? Let's check. Okay, we are using space around. Why we are using space around there? I just wanted to give some padding, I think, but basically we can give here. I'm gonna say padding 0, 20. Okay, awesome. So what I'm gonna do is taking those text inputs using use state. So I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna say const info user info and set info. It's gonna be use state. At the beginning it's gonna be an empty object and we are gonna change them. Const handle change, and we are gonna use it for our inputs here. This is file input. It updates our file, and for this input we don't have anything. Let's write on change. It's gonna be handle change. And remember, in our source we have IDs. It's exactly the same text in our MongoDB, username, email, phone. So directly we are gonna use them. I'm gonna say set info, and again I'm gonna use previous state, and I'm gonna return previous state and event target ID, and it's gonna be event target value. So when we click this button, firstly we are gonna upload image, and we are gonna take its readable URL, and we are gonna send this URL along with those inputs to our MongoDB. To do that, I'm gonna create handle click function. e.prevent default. We don't want to refresh this page, so let's use it here. Send button. I'm gonna say on click event. And firstly, we are gonna upload our image here. Let's say first async function, but where we are gonna upload our image. In our other tutorials, we were using Google Firestore, but this time let's use Cloudinary. If you log in your Cloudinary account, you are gonna see this page, and we are gonna upload files here. It's really easy to use. Let's come here, and in the dashboard you are gonna see your cloud name. This name is important, we are gonna use it. And as you can see, it's a free plan. We don't need to pay anything. And what I'm gonna do is coming here and giving some configuration. I'm gonna come here, upload, and I'm gonna scroll down. And what I'm gonna do is adding upload preset. And here I'm gonna write my preset name, signing mode will be unsigned, and folder will be upload folder. And I'm gonna save, and I'm gonna open documentation, and as you can see, upload API reference. So basically we are gonna use this URL. In this part we are gonna use our cloud name. Remember, it was Lama Dev, and you are gonna use your own. So let's come here. Firstly, remember we have a file here, but we should transform into form data. So I'm gonna say const data is gonna be form data, and inside this data I'm gonna pass my file, append file name and file. And also I should provide my upload preset. To do that, I'm gonna say append upload preset and my folder name, which is upload. And after that I will say try catch block. If there is an error, I will say console log, or you can show this anywhere. And I'm gonna say const response. Actually, let's say upload response. Await, I'm gonna use Axios, and it's gonna be a post method and my URL. And as I said, we are gonna change here. It's gonna be Lama Dev. Let's import this Axios, by the way. Okay. And I'm gonna pass this data. Let's see whether it's gonna work or not. I will say console log and this data, and I'm gonna choose this image and let's upload. Something is wrong. Oh, sorry, it should be version, of course, and this demo will be our cloud name, by the way. Upload response and data. Let's try again. And as you can see, it gives us those properties, and we are gonna need this image URL. Let's take this. I'm gonna say const URL. I'm gonna destructure this. Upload response dot data. And after that, after uploading, we are gonna make API request. Let's say const new user, and it's gonna include all user information which we are taking here and updating in this function, and also we are gonna use this image. It's gonna be URL. Let's make our API request. It's gonna be Axios post method auth register, and we are gonna pass our new user object. And that's all. Let's try. I'm gonna choose this image, Jane, phone number, password, country, city, and username. I'm gonna send. Okay, there is something wrong. I'm gonna say console log info. Oh, we couldn't update them. That because we didn't use ID here. It's gonna be input.id. Let's try right now. I'm gonna choose again. Okay, it works. And Jane. Let's send. I'm gonna check network. Okay, it's successful, and let's check here. And as you can see, it's here. Okay, awesome. So let's do the same thing for hotels. I'm gonna click here, and we are gonna change. I'm gonna do the same thing. I will copy here and paste for new hotel. This time it's not gonna be file, it's gonna be files, and we are gonna upload multiple files. So let's say multiple here, set files, and we are not going to take only one, we are going to take whole, and in this case we are going to see here only first item, so I'm going to say 0. Okay, let's use this here. This time I'm not going to forget ID, input.id, and on change method it's going to be handle change. By the way, we are going to users page. That because in the data table, as you can see, our link is going to users page. We are going to change it, and we can use our path again. So I'm going to say path and new page. Let's try. I'm going to hotels and add new. Okay, we are here. Let's close here. By the way, we are not going to use those inputs from our app.js because we were using the common new component here, but this time we are going to use new hotel. In this case, we don't need this inputs or even this title. Let's copy here and delete this. I'm gonna come here and delete this probe also. I'm gonna paste it like that, and our inputs will be hotel inputs like that. Okay, here. So I'm gonna do exactly the same thing, but we are gonna add one more thing. Hotel model has featured property. So I'm gonna add here HTML select, and one more component I'm gonna add here, and we will be able to choose any room. Let's do that. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna create one more form input. And we don't need this key. And label will be featured. And we are not gonna use input here, we are gonna use select. I will say ID featured. On change will be handle change. And inside I'm gonna write my options. It's gonna be no or yes. I'm gonna say value is gonna be false. If it's yes, it's gonna be true. Let's see. Okay, something like that. We are gonna choose if it's featured or not. And let's create another one. And we are gonna choose our rooms. I'm gonna copy this and paste again. But this time it's not gonna be form input. That's because I wanna make this 100%. So I'm gonna say select rooms. I'll say rooms. Let's say ID rooms. And we will be able to choose multiple room. And I'm gonna say on change. It's gonna be handle change. Handle select. Let's create const handle select. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is fetching all rooms first. To do that, again, we are gonna use fetch. Let's come here and use fetch, and endpoint will be rooms. So let's use this data. I'm gonna delete those options, and I'm gonna use map. I will say if it's loading, right here loading. If it's not, and if there is a data, right here data.map. And for each room, show me an option, and it's gonna show us room.title. Of course, we should give here value, and it's gonna be room ID. Let's see. Okay, but why it's not multiple? Did I delete this or? Okay, perfect. So let's take care of this class name. Form input, as you can see, it's 40%. I'm gonna say with 100%. And select inside. It's gonna be the same. Maybe I can give some padding. Okay, perfect. We can choose multiple items. And when I click this button, we are gonna upload our images. Then we are gonna create new hotel, and also we are gonna add room IDs inside hotel rooms. Let's write, and you are gonna understand better right now. By the way, we should handle this select. Let me show you something. I'm gonna say event target and selected options. I'm gonna open console. By the way, we didn't give any key. Let's say key will be room.id. I'm gonna refresh. Okay, I'm gonna choose this one and another one, and as you can see, it shows us an HTML collection. So it's not an array. So how we can transform this? What I'm gonna do is writing here array from and this HTML collection. Of course, we are not gonna take all those properties. We are gonna need only value. So I will say option and return me option.value. Okay, let's say const value, and we are gonna create one more state here. It's gonna be rooms. set rooms. At the beginning it's gonna be an empty array, and we are gonna set it here. Set rooms, and it's gonna be value. Let's see. Console log and rooms. I'm gonna clear here. I'm gonna choose this, and as you can see, its ID is here. I'm gonna choose one more. Perfect. If I don't select this, it's gonna delete. So we have room IDs, we have text inputs, we have image input. So let's take care of onClick method. I'll say handle click, prevent default, and try catch block. And firstly, I want to upload all my images. To do that, we are gonna use map. So if you remember, if you are using map for any API request, what we were doing, we were using promise all. So I will say list. It's gonna be promise all. Of course, it's gonna be await and async here. And inside, I'm gonna use all files. And let's say map, and for each file I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. Remember, first creating data, then uploading this file and taking this URL, and finally we are gonna send this. I'll say return this URL. Of course, we are using await here. In this case, it should be async. Let's import these Axios. And after getting this list, which includes our image URLs, we are gonna create new hotel. I'm gonna say const new hotel. It's gonna be again info, rooms, and photos. And it's going to be list. So let's send this. I'm going to say await Axios post and hotels, and we are going to send this new hotel. So let's use this. I'm going to copy, and on click event it's going to be handle click. And I forgot something here. That because our files are not an array. Let's see, console log files. I'm gonna choose some images here. And as you can see, it's an object. So how we are gonna transform this into an array? We are gonna use object values. So let's see. I hope everything is okay. I'm gonna refresh the page, choose those images, some names, it really doesn't matter, and some rooms here, and I'm gonna send. And as you can see, it's successful. All our images. Perfect. Let's see. And it's here. Awesome. And one more thing we are gonna need, and it's gonna be rooms. Of course, we didn't pass our columns. Let's do that. I'm gonna copy this hotels route and paste, and it's gonna be rooms. And this page will be new room. For these columns, it's gonna be room columns, like that. Title, description, price. By the way, why it says add new user? Let's check. Data table. Okay. So I'm gonna write here path. Actually, it's not add new. It's gonna be just path. Okay, users, hotels, and rooms. So we already know we can delete this. So I'm gonna add new room page. New room, and as you can see, we don't have any prop here. Title will be add new room. And instead of inputs, it's gonna be room inputs. ID, type. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is deleting this image. So we are not gonna add any image. Actually, let's delete this left side. Like that. Okay, I'm gonna create handle function, handle change, and here I'm gonna delete this file. Okay, and this time we are gonna choose hotels. That because remember our API, routes and rooms. As you can see, to create any room, we need this hotel ID. So we are going to fetch hotels first. And according to our choice, we are going to update it. I will say hotel ID. Let's say null or undefined. And we don't need form input, that because we don't need any file. And I'm going to create one more form input here. Let's delete this key and let's write here our title, choose a hotel. And again, we are going to use select. ID will be hotel ID. Remember, in our API, it's going to be our parameter. And I'm going to write my options. Of course, I will say if it's loading, show me loading text, and if there is a data, map through this data, and for each hotel, create here an option. But this time it's not going to be multiple. We are going to be able to choose only one hotel. So I'm going to say hotel.id. Sorry, it's going to be name. That's because users can see this, but value will be hotel ID. So let's write here on change event. And whenever we change our option, we are going to update this hotel ID. So I will say hotel ID is going to be event target dot value. Oops. So basically, this event target and value will be our hotel ID. Like that. As you can see, we can choose any of them. And let's create our handle click function for our button here. On click, handle click. Const handle click. Event prevent default. We are going to send it, but let's check what we have here. And models. And inside room, we have title, price, maximum people, description, like here. And we are going to pass hotel ID, but additionally, we have room numbers, which includes the actual number and unavailable dates. So we are going to need one more place. So let's come here, and I'm going to create one more form input before this, hotels, and it's going to be rooms. And this time we are going to use text area. It's going to be a little bit bigger like that. And let's give placeholder. Give comma between room numbers. So let's create use state here, and it's going to be rooms. It's going to be an empty array, and we are going to set it here. In our text area, I'm going to say on change, set rooms, It's going to be event, target, and value. By the way, of course, it's going to be a string, but we are going to make it an array. And we are going to do this here. Let's say const room numbers. And I'm going to say rooms, it's a text. And I'm going to use split method. And let's say comma. So it's going to give us an array. But if we do that, let's check. Room numbers. If I write here some numbers like that, I'm going to send. And as you can see, we don't have object here. But in our case, we are going to need this object. By default, unavailable dates will be an empty array, but we are going to need this number. So to create this, I'm going to use a map. And for each room, return me number equals this room. Let's see right now. I'm going to click, and this time it returns those objects. Perfect. This is exactly what we need. So I'm going to write here try catch block. And here I'm going to use await Axios and post method, and it's going to be rooms. And remember hotel ID here. So I'm going to say hotel ID, and we are going to pass our information, which is info and room numbers. By the way, I forgot async here. I didn't use it. Let's check. Okay. On change method, it's gonna be handle change. By the way, there is a typo here. ID. Okay, everything looks good. Let's try. Of course, we forgot unique key for this. Options. Hotel ID. Okay, anyway, it's not that important. I'm gonna go to network. I'm gonna write new room, awesome room, this price, 2 people, and I'm gonna choose hotel here, Hotel Jane, and I'm gonna send, and it's here. As you can see. And room numbers, as you can see, by default, it adds unavailable dates. They have individual IDs. Perfect. And this is our room ID. Awesome. So basically, that's all. Of course, we don't have home page or single page, but if you understood this tutorial, it's a piece of cake for you. I think you learned the important part. Of course, I didn't implement anything here, that's because we didn't sell. What you can do here, you can get rid of all those components and you can say maybe latest hotels, latest users, but you already know how to make API requests, how to create new endpoints. I think it's not a big deal. And if you enhance this project, let me know in the comments or our Discord or Facebook groups. I'm gonna be waiting for your projects. Okay, that's all. I hope you liked it. If you learned something new today, please like the video, and you can support Lama Dev by joining the channel or using the link in the description below. And don't forget to follow social media accounts. I hope I will see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.